Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku finds himself in a mansion with his friends? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. It's my fault. I should have done more. She broke down after having another nightmare. She called him to her room even if it was against the rules. But she didn't regret it. He is the only one who understood what she was going through. Her eyes are brimming with tears and he wraps his arms around her. He said that you wouldn't make it. I was so scared, she says, squeezing him tight. His strong arms around her. I was so scared I'd lose. Her voice breaks as tears rush down her cheeks. A small sob comes unbidden and she squeezes him tighter, burying her face in his shoulder. Ochako, Izuku says in a soothing voice, one hand on her head and the other wrapped around her waist, pressing against him. But as calm as he was crying with her. I'm sorry. The brunette blushed slightly at the use of her first name. We all tried as best we could, and Togata is... His words halting as he tries to talk through his tears. Quirkless and Sir didn't make it, I couldn't save them. Ochako wiped his tears. There is a silver lining to this. You saved Eri from Chisaki. If there's anything you could have done, you would have done it. They inched closer. You always give it your all. They are inches apart. You are a hero, Izuku Midoriya. Heroes deserve to be rewarded. Ochako puts her hand on his cheek and leans forward, closing her eyes. Izuku blushes but he leans forward, closing his eyes awaiting the reward that he has longed for. My. It's so sweet how you comfort each other. A masculine voice said, appearing out of nowhere. Huh. The two of them jumped away from each other, looking around for the source of the voice. They spotted a dark-haired man in a suit sitting in Ochako's chair. Oh dear. I ruined the moment. My apologies. The man stood, bowing to them. It's okay. Izuku muttered, blushing furiously. Who are you? How did you get into my room? Ochako asked nervously. I apologize once again for the intrusion. My name is Alistair Sinclair. Despite my appearance, I am not of this world. The correct term for what I am would be a time spirit. A time spirit? Izuku asked. Yes, a time spirit. Sir Nightie's death was not in vain. However, it was inevitable. The time spirit said sadly. But that is not why I am here. Inevitable? What do you mean by that? Why are you here then? Ochako asked nervously. As a time spirit, I have the ability to show the future. However, this means that I will have to show the past beforehand, Alistair said, ignoring Ochako's first two questions. This is something that will involve the two of you, your classmates and a few more people. Our class? What do they have to do with this and why do they have to view the past? Who are these other people that will be joining us? Izuku asked cautiously. All will be answered in time, Izuku Midoriya. But I will confirm that your class will have a role in the upcoming future. The past will be shown to cover many events that have occurred and that your classmates may understand certain aspects. I understand the caution that you are feeling. These young heroes in training are people you can trust, but they are not the same as those you may feel conflicted about. I can assure you that. Oh, however, I must warn you of a few things. Secrets will be revealed and you will relive certain events that nobody should go through in their life. I apologize for that in advance. Izuku was already panicking internally. He thought that when he entered UA High, those bad memories were behind him. Now his whole class will see what he has been through and they will see that All Might has given him one for all. He's going to be rejected all over again because he was not born with his quirk. The worst of it is that Ochako won't accept him once she sees how obsessed he was with being a hero. But being a hero is not his only dream anymore. She's his dream girl. He couldn't do it without her. Plus, who would want to date someone that's constantly reckless and breaks his bones? Someone that won't be able to make time for her or could end up in the hospital on any day. He doesn't deserve her. She probably liked him all this time but he ignored all the obvious signals because he was so oblivious. He should just deny Alistair's invitation. He felt his eyes watering, his heart pounding rapidly, and he was having trouble breathing. He felt a pair of arms wrap around him, and all of those conflicted thoughts washed away as his heart slowed down and he was breathing normally again. Izuku, Ochako whispered, wrapping her arms tightly around Izuku. You were there for me when I needed someone. Now it's my turn to be there for you. Izuku smiled hearing her say his name. But he was grateful that Ochako was by his side. He put his arms around his best friend and hugged her back. He faced Alistair and looked him in the eye. We're ready, Mr. Sinclair. Alistair smiled at the young hero. He was right about you. No reluctance? How do you know about that? Izuku asked. So, like I said, all will be answered in time. Alistair raised his hand up, about to snap his fingers. Wait, I need to know something. What is it? But why show me this? Izuku asked. It's simple, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku looked confused. You are a true hero. Alistair snaps his fingers and the room suddenly turns white. When Izuku and Ochako open their eyes, they find themselves in a completely different room on a bed unlike the one in their rooms. There were 2 wardrobes next to each other with their names on the door, a table with a lamp, and 2 windows where the sunlight was glaring with 2 armchairs. Where are we? Ochako asked, looking around the room. Izuku's eyes widened as he looked around. It looks like some kind of rich person's room. Obviously it's not one of ours because we don't have this fancy stuff and we don't have a king-size bed even though it is so comfy. The only room I've seen like this is Yayarosa's room and she's not here, so who knows where we are. So that means that we are no longer in the dorms. If that means that we are no longer in UA, then we have to be somewhere else. This is crazy. I have heard of interdimensional travel, but I didn't think that we were going to be the ones to go through such a thing. Izuku muttered while Ochako looked at him. Damn it. Where the hell am I? Izuku's muttering came to a halt when he heard the yelling outside the door. He looked at Ochako and realized whose voice that was. That sounded like Bakugo. I guess Mr. Sinclair was right when he said our class would be involved in this whole future and past thing. Ochako said, shaking her head in disbelief. Why, this is going to be a lot to process. Izuku said nervously. Are you going to be all right, Deku? I know that you and Bakugo have history. But I don't want to see you get hurt more because of him. Ochako touched his shoulder. I'm going to be okay. I think Mr. Sinclair was right about one thing. I can trust you guys with whatever is going to happen, Izuku said with a determined look on his face. Ochako blushed at seeing Izuku look determined. Let's go find out what we're doing here. Izuku turned to the door. Ochako grabbed his hand. Wait, Deku. When we have time alone, can we talk about what happened before Mr. Sinclair interrupted us? Izuku squeezed her hand. Yeah, we should. When they went downstairs, they saw Katsuki in a giant lobby, yelling at the ceiling. Listen, you suited bastard. I told you that I don't give a shit about the future that you want me to see. The only future I know is the one where I'm going to be the #1 hero and surpass all might. You hear me? Hey Kaken. What are you doing? Who are you yelling at? Izuku asked, looking confused. Deku, you shitty nerd. This is all your fault. First I have to deal with damn little brats with quirks, and when I go to my room to sleep, a useless extra in a suit appears out of nowhere asking me to see the future. I told him that he can take his future and shove it. Next thing I know, I'm in the same room as Flatface. Tell me what the hell is going on. Katsuki demanded. Bakugo, calm down. That man approached us with the same deal. At least we agreed because we want to know what is going to happen in the future. Ochako frowned seeing Katsuki yell at Izuku. Shut it, pink cheeks. This doesn't concern you. Katsuki snapped at Ochako. Bakugo, that's not how you talk to a fellow classmate. Apologize now. Tenya said as he appeared with Mei Hatsum behind him walking down the stairs while Izuku glared at Katsuki. Don't tell me what to do, for eyes. I can do whatever the hell I want. Bakubro, calm down. It's not that serious. Ijiro told Katsuki as he went down the spiraling staircase with Mina behind him. I was trying to see if I could explore this place until Bakugo started yelling, seeing me in the same room. Hanta said, arriving down with the rest of Class 1A and Hitoshi Shinso behind him. Hey, Want it? Do you have any idea what's going on? Izuku heard the familiar voice and looked up at the staircase on the other side of the lobby and spotted who was calling. Hey Tetsu, Ajiro called up. What are you doing here, man? I was hoping you'd tell us that, the steel quirk user said. Me and Kendo just arrived here. The rest of Class 1B are here with us. Nito Monoma's head perked up as the students of Class 1B walked down the stairs. What's this? All of Class A and Class B in one room. You people think that you're so much better than us even though 2 of your classmates failed the provisional exam. Is this a way to hype up how great you are? That's rich, considering that 1B is such a superior class. Most of Class B shook their heads listening to their classmate. Monoma, shut up before I put you to sleep. Itsuka scowled at Nito as he ridiculed their sister class. Nito laughed at his classmate. Since when do you defend these 1A losers? Are you thinking of joining their class, Kendo? I didn't know you were that eager to go against your class because you made friends with these people. Monoma, that's enough out of you. You do not talk about my class like that. Shut your mouth before I do it with my scarf. Shodaizawa's voice silenced the blonde's ranting. The grumpy and tired homeroom teacher of Class 1A walked down the same staircase that his students walked down from with present Mike and Midnight, all dressed casually than in their hero costumes, and the retired number 1 hero, All Might, who was in a suit. The only odd thing was Aizawa had his scarf on, which can be used as a capture item. Aizawa's capture scarf started to move, and the white bear/dog/mouse-like creature who is the principal of UA popped out and climbed down. May I have everyone's attention, please? Raise your hand. Katsuki. You can't start yelling just because you're not going to become the number 1 hero. A woman's yelling interrupted the principal. Katsuki's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost, while Izuku had not heard that voice in 11 years. Everyone looked up to the sound of the voice and saw a woman that looked like an older feminine version of Katsuki coming down the stairs full speed as a man with spiky brown hair and glasses and a short lady with green hair were behind her while the man was trying to calm her down. Katsuki looked surprised seeing his mother and father. Mom. Izuku smiled at his mother. When Mitsuki Bakugo came down the stairs, she made a beeline for her son and smacked him upside the head. Everyone looked shocked at the action except for Izuku, Inko Midoriya, Masaru Bakugo, Aizawa, and All Might. Then she and her husband hugged their son. Izuku tried not to laugh at the surprising action that was done to his former childhood friend and ran to his mom, hugging her after so long. Izuku! Inko smiled and hugged him tightly, as this is the first time she had seen her son in a while. How are you, sweetie? I'm doing great, Mom. Things have been hectic lately, but it's been worth it. He smiles at her, hiding the pain and sadness that he felt since the Yakuza raid. Ochako notices the look in Izuku's eyes when he says that and smiles sadly. She approaches Izuku and Inko with a bright smile. Hi, Mrs. Midoriya. I'm Ochako Uraraka, Izuku's best friend. Hello, Ochako, nice to meet you. Izuku told me all about you. I'm glad to see he's making friends at UA. Inko smiled at Ochako. Oh really? What else did you say about me, Izuku? Ochako asked mischievously. Mom. You're embarrassing me, Izuku said, covering his face with his hands. Well, it's true, sweetie. I didn't think you would stop praising her after the sports. Inko started to say until Present Mike whistled before Principal Nizu stopped him. My apologies, Mrs. Midoriya and Mr. and Mrs. Bakugo. We have important matters to discuss, and I'm guessing that you 3 have been invited to join us as well. Please raise your hand if you have been visited by a man named Alistair Sinclair. Nizu asked everyone in the room. Half the room raised their hands, including Inko, All Might, Izuku, Ochako, Shoto, Momo, Tenya, Setsuna Toichi Kodai, Tetsuya, Nito, Itsuka, and a fuming Katsuki, while the other half of the room looked confused. Now raise your hand if a woman named Giselle Sinclair visited you. The other half of the room raised their hands, including Aijiro, Mina, Kyoka, Denki, Hitoshi, Mei, Mitsuki, Masaru, Aizawa, Present Mike, and Midnight. So all of you have arrived. Now we can get started. Alistair appeared with a young gorgeous blonde woman, dressed in a black knee-length dress at his side. You bastard! Who do you think you are bringing us here? Katsuki said, about to explode the man, but there were no explosions appearing from his hand. What the hell? Why is my quirk not working? Katsuki yelled as he twitched his fingers. Now Katsuki Bakugu. Don't be stubborn. You refused to listen to me, so I brought you here against your wishes. I can't have you destroying my mansion with explosions. It's an honor to meet you all. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Alistair Sinclair. Half of you have already met me. This is my wife, Giselle Sinclair. The rest of you have met her, Alistair said as his wife smiled and waved at everyone. Mansion? Everyone thought, their eyes widening. Ochako was about to faint until Izuku caught her. Are you both American, by any chance? President Mike asked. Yes, we are American. I was born in Houston, Texas but raised in Manchester, England. Giselle is from Hollywood, California, Alistair said. Pony Tsunatori smiled brightly since she was not the only American in the room. Welcome to our humble abode, ladies and gentlemen. As you saw with Katsuki, your quirks will not work here except for Principal Nizus. However, we will allow certain individuals to have some privileges. Kuji Koda, you may keep your bunny for emotional support. Fumikage Tokoyami, your ability to summon Dark Shadow remains the same as it is a sentient being. Mizo Shoji, you will have the ability to make your duplicate arms into the shape of a mouth when you want and or need to talk. Yuga Aoyama, you should not experience any stomach aches. Mitsuki Bakugu, your inability to secrete glycerin will not affect your skin. Giselle explained while everyone else looked at each other with shock. Now you are wondering why all of you are here. My wife and I have brought you here because you students and teachers have important roles in the future. Time will not pass in the real world while you are here. So I will tell you how you will see the future. Alistair explains to the large group. Allow me, darling. Giselle put her hand on her husband's chest. As we have told you, we have the ability to show you the future. All of you have agreed to let us do this, except Angry Pomeranian here. That got a few chuckles from the students and adults in the lobby. Thankfully, we will be showing these through a show where you are the cast. It will be showing the events of the future, with all the things that come with it like musical numbers and narration from a certain character and the thoughts that come from the characters. There's one thing we have not X. Who you calling Angry Pomeranian? Like I said before. Who the fuck cares about your supposed future? I asked if I was going to be the #1 hero and he ignored me. Katsuki explodes at Giselle. Katsuki Bakugu, I am going to ask you to stop yelling please. Do not yell at my wife. Alistair said calmly. Don't tell me what to do. I am gonna ask you once again and you will. Alistair waved his hand and Katsuki disappeared. I have had enough of that boy, Alistair said, pinching the bridge of his nose. Katsuki, where is my son? Mitsuki demanded. Do not worry, Mrs. Bakugu. I have simply sent him back to his room and locked the door from the outside. Nobody yells at my wife and thinks that they will get away with it. As I was saying before I was interrupted. We have not told Katsuki that we will be showing the past due to his behavior as you all saw. As time spirits, we cannot telepathically show you these aspects because we do not have that power. We are not telepaths. Giselle continued as she calmed down her husband. How is that possible? None of us agreed to such things. President Mike looked at the woman in disbelief. The world is not what it seems, but it isn't anything else either. Who do you think said that? Hisashi Yamada? Alistair asked, looking at President Mike. Raymond Kano quoted that. But what does that have to do with this? President Mike questioned. Would you have expected that your whole life was a show just for other people to watch? People would always find a way to criticize your life and sometimes your very existence. Alistair looked at the students and teachers. A tense silence began to fill the room. Izuku's eyes widened, realizing that Alistair was talking about him. I think it's best that we watch this show. Maybe it will help us in our path as heroes, Izuku said, breaking the silence. If Midoriya is okay with it, then I will watch this show as well. Tenya says as he puts his hand on Izuku's shoulder. Me too. I'm with Deku on this, Ochako said. Soon, everyone had agreed to watch the show, except for one person because he was still locked in his room. Alistair snapped his fingers and a fuming Katsuki reappeared, standing in the same place. Katsuki, will you listen to me this time or will you continue to act like a child while you are here? Alistair asked, looking at the said blonde. I'll listen to whatever you have to say, Katsuki said, glaring at the man. Brilliant, Alistair smiled at the boy. Will you join us? If I have to, Katsuki said, still glaring. Wonderful. We will start at 12, which is in 45 minutes. If you want or need anything, for example food or drinks, just say or think of what you want and it will appear in your hands. When it is time to watch the show, we will meet here so that we can go to the theater. Giselle and I will tell you how long we will be in the theater when we arrive there. Principal, you may take the stage. Alistair nodded to Nizu. Thank you. As Mr. Sinclair said, we will be watching the show in 45 minutes. You can do whatever you want in the meantime. However, this is not a vacation. Students, you will consider this showing as school, so you will wear your uniforms to the theater. The teachers are excused from this rule. Now run along, enjoy your free time. Nizu smiled at the students. One more thing, there is a gym on the second floor and a swimming pool outside. If you want something to do in your free time, you have those choices. Giselle said before everyone split. I'll see you in the room later, Uraraka. I need to talk to someone for a little bit. Izuku said to Ochako. Okay, I'll get some food. See you Ochako waved to Izuku. Izuku walked up to the person he needed to see the most. The one that he can confide in with anything. Hey All Might. May I talk to you? They walk away from the other teachers. Sure young Midoriya. What is it? All Might turned to look at Izuku. It's about what Mr. Sinclair said. He knows that I used to be quirkless. When he was at the dorms, he said that someone was right about me. I was confused but then he said, no reluctance. All Might looked surprised. Do you think he knows about One for All? I mean he probably does since he mentioned the show. He did say that I can trust my classmates with my secrets but I'm scared how they will react. But what about Hatsum, Shinso and Class B? They're not my classmates and I'm scared how they will react. This is nerve-wracking. Izuku muttered while All Might smacked his head. Stop that young Midoriya. It'll be alright. Your classmates have been one big happy family to you. You can trust the others so consider them as extended family though young Monoma can be a problem. He thinks that he can copy One for All and use it against you. But when he finds out about the physical backlash, he'll think twice before trying to copy it. All Might said confidently. Alright, I got this. Thanks, All Might. Izuku smiled. Of course, my boy. Now go on. Get some food. Spend some time with your friends. You got time before the show starts. All Might smiled. Izuku left to go to the room that he shares with Ochako. He knocks on the door. Come in. Ochako's voice came from inside. Izuku opened the door and saw her looking out the window. Hey Uraraka. What are you looking at? Nothing really. It's crazy that we're going to be living here to see the future in a show where we are the cast. It feels too good to be true. Ochako said. You can always pinch yourself to see if you're dreaming. That's what I did when I found out that I was going to you. Izuku joked. Shut up. I'm serious, Deku. Ochako punched his arm softly. Are you hungry? I'm starving. Didn't you eat while I was downstairs? Izuku asked. Nah. I wanted to wait for you. I was hoping we could eat together. They sat on the bed. Sounds good. What do you want to eat? I was hoping for some katsudon. When Izuku said that, the katsudon appeared in his hands with a pair of chopsticks. That's so cool. I want some mochi and meat buns. The said items appeared in Ochako's hands. You want to try some of my katsudon? Izuku offered. Ochako nodded. She ate a piece of pork from Izuku's chopsticks while she offered him a piece of her mochi and a meat bun. While they ate, they talked about what they would see in the show. After they finished eating, they changed into their summer uniforms and headed down to the main room. Once everyone was downstairs, Alistair and Giselle walked them to the east wing of the mansion and opened the door. When they went inside, they found themselves in a movie theater with no seats. There was a large movie screen to the far end of the right and a refreshment stand towards the back along with blank notebooks. Alistair snapped his fingers and 5 rows of love seats and couches appeared. For Class A, the seating arrangement is based on your rooms. For the people who shared a room, you are to sit together. Mr. Aoyama and Mr. Shinso, you may sit with anyone as you please. Students from Class B, parents, teachers, you are to sit on the couches if you'd like. But Mr. Minoma, you are to sit with Ms. Kendo and Mr. Tetsutetsu in a row with Class A. If anyone would like to move their seats to sit with their friends, I do not mind. There are notebooks in the back for those who'd want to take notes. You may need them in order to jot information down. If you need anything, just think about what you want and it will appear. The students grabbed notebooks for themselves. Aizawa grabbed notebooks for himself and each of the teachers and Nizu. Class B took seats in the first and second row with the girls sitting on one couch each in the second row while the boys took the other couches. Hitoshi sat with Yosetsu Owaze and Sankaibara in the second row. Mei, Tenya, Izuku, Ochako, Shoto, Momo, Tsuyu, Fumikage, Toru and Mishiro took the love seats in the third row. In the fourth row, Nito, Itsuka and Tetsutetsu sat on a couch. Hanta and Katsuki pushed their love seat to join Ijiro and Mina's love seat on the left side while Kyoka and Denki pushed their love seat from the right. Rikido and Koji pushed their couch at the end to join Minoru, Mizo and Yuga. In the back row, Inko, Mitsuki and Masaru sat on one couch while the teachers sat on two conjoined love seats and Nizu sat on a recliner next to them. Alistair and Giselle sat on another love seat with a remote by their side. Before we get started, there's something you'd like to know. Everyone turned to look at Giselle. It is quite impossible for everyone to be the main character of a show. So you will be watching a certain hero's life, from childhood to his future. Who's so important that we need to watch this show? Let me guess, it's going to be me because I'm going to surpass All Might? Katsuki said, grinning maniacally. Wrong, you angry Pomeranian. It's not about you. Get that through your thick skull? Giselle said, looking disgusted. Alistair smiled, shaking his head. Katsuki had a vein bulging out of his forehead. The students laughed or snickered while Izuku was fighting back laughter. Mitsuki smiled to see that another person was tired of Katsuki's shit. Inko was laughing and Masaru put his hand to his head. The teachers looked amused. The hero whose life we will be watching is Izuku Midoriya, Alistair said with a smile. Everyone looked at Izuku in shock except All Might, who smiled at the boy. Emi? Izuku stuttered. How the fuck is you a main character? Katsuki looked enraged. The majority of the students rolled their eyes to his reaction, but they were wondering the same thing. Bakugo! No foul language! The class rep exclaimed. Shut it, Four Eyes! The blonde snapped back. So excuse me, but why is that Class 1A loser getting any spotlight at all? He's just a dash, Nito started to say before Alistair glared at him and quickly shut his mouth before he ended up like Katsuki. Alistair sighed and said, if you had not noticed, Izuku Midoriya is and always will be a beacon of hope amongst you. His skills have resulted in your beliefs in him. He has changed your lives for the better, whether you agree with it or not. With that he nodded to Izuku. Izuku felt tears in his eyes. He didn't feel embarrassed or shy. He felt happy that he was acknowledged for being a hero and that his friends cared about him and believed in him. Ochako put a hand on his shoulder. It's true, Deku. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made it into UA. I would have not met you and been able to meet everyone else. You have changed my life for the better. Ochako smiled at Izuku, who was blinking away his tears. Young love, Giselle sighed dreamily. Remember when we first started dating, darling? Alistair chuckled as Midnight, Toru and Mina tried not to squeal. I remember it like it was yesterday. I don't think we kept our hands off each other. Izuku and Ochako widened their eyes, looked at each other and covered their faces with their hands, blushing madly. Everyone laughed except a few stoic ones watching the two blush. 4 things before we start. First, there are 5 seasons in the show. The first season has 13 episodes. The second, third, fourth, and fifth seasons have 25 episodes. You will be watching 6 episodes a day. Before the last episode, you may talk among yourselves about what you have seen and what you would have done differently. We will watch the final episode of the season after a 2-hour lunch break. Second, you will also be watching 3 movies. Third, I will pause the given episode at certain moments due to the effect of the shock that you will be feeling as you watch, or if you take too long for your talks, because I cannot afford for you to miss any important information. If any part is too much for a certain individual to watch, I will not stop you from leaving the theater and taking a breather. Finally, we were originally going to have Mr. Minoma, Mr. Tetsu, and Ms. Kendo with Class A and Ms. Hatsum. Then we were gonna have Mr. Shinso and the rest of Class B appear before the viewing of the second season, but we thought it was best that you all know why the petty little rivalry between your two classes started. Mr. Shinso desires to join the hero course, so he is here to see what heroes in training have gone through. Alistair explained. A silence filled the room as everyone took in what they heard. Izuku was starting to get nervous, but Ochako looked at him and smiled. He smiled back and felt that he could face the world with her by his side. Shall we start? Giselle asked, breaking the silence. Yes. Everyone in the room said confidently. Let's begin, Alistair said as he pressed play on his remote. The lights dimmed and the show started. The first images are a shot of an apartment building and leafy green trees. The sound of cicadas. A child crying in the background. A little boy with messy green hair with a diamond pattern of freckles on each cheek. He was crying as he stared forward. Deku, is that you? You're so small and cute. Ochako smiled as the boy next to her was blushing. You're so cute when you were little. I want to pinch those little cheeks. Ashido exclaimed. Why are you being so mean? You're making him cry, Kakin. The camera zoomed out as child Izuku stood, defending a crying boy on the ground. If you keep on hurting him, he went into a fighting stance. I'll stop you myself. At such a young age, you had such heroic traits, Ida said, nodding his head. My. Even at a young age, Midoriya wanted to help people. Midnight acknowledged. Child Katsuki and two. Other kids stared at child Izuku before smirking. One child grew red wings from his back while the other child extended his fingers. You want to pretend to be a hero? Child Katsuki asked, before slamming his right fist into his left palm, causing an explosion. You don't stand a chance without a quirk, Deku? Izuku flinched back as the three kids rushed towards him. The cicadas continued to buzz and a bruised and beaten Izuku was laying in the sand of the park looking dazed. Then an older Izuku began to narrate. Alistair paused the show. Mitsuki glared at her son in her seat and Masaru was just as angry. Katsuki? The anger was clear in her voice. She was ready to hurt her son for bullying the boy he called his friend. Inko put her hand to her mouth in shock, realizing that her son lied to her when he said he fell on the ground while playing that day. Such arrogance for a young child, Momo says, shaking her head. All Might stared at the screen, rage burning in his eyes as he watched his successor lay on the ground as the other teachers frowned at the scene, now aware of the history between two of their students and that Katsuki called Izuku quirkless. Izuku put his head down as he fought back tears. The students turned to glare at Katsuki, who ignored the looks directed at him. Ochako stood up abruptly. What is the matter with you, Bakugo? Why would you hurt Deku just because he wants to defend his friend? Did you lose your humanity or something growing up? Tenya stood up as well. I agree with you, Rarika. That is no way for a future hero to behave. The students from Class B grumbled that it was wrong for him to hurt someone he called a friend. Katsuki ignored Ochako and Tenya. Shut it 1B extras. I don't give a shit if you think what I did was right or wrong. Deku was not my friend. The blonde growled and turned to Alistair. Hey suit bastard. You didn't say anything about showing the past. Katsuki Bakugo. Do not call me suit bastard. Consider this your last warning, Alistair said with surprising calmness. You would not listen to me. Several times I tried to tell you that in order to see the future, we will need to see the past. You refused to listen. So I felt it was unnecessary to tell you what will be happening. You might want to take the time to show some remorse while you still can. Let us continue. He pressed play. Here's the sad truth. All men are not created equal. When I was 4 years old, I learned that some kids have more power than others. Aizawa looked at his problem child as the other teachers looked on sadly. The boy found out at a young age in such a terrible way how the world really worked. Nizu's smile shifted to a thin line as he realized the same thing. It is a sad but true revelation. I hope all or most of you have learned this in a way that was not as violent. A foot splashed in a puddle, as the screen showed a 14-year-old Izuku running down a street in a black middle school uniform. But that won't hold me back. If anything, it pushed me to do better. The green-haired protagonist narrated. There's that signature Midoriya smile. Mina exclaimed, causing Izuku to blush once more and smile. But his smile melted when he realized what day was being shown. A giant stood in the middle of a railroad, roaring while Izuku stopped running, staring in awe at him. The image froze, outlining his form, a caption appearing Izuku Midoriya. A huge crowd had gathered, watching the giant. The screen cut back to the villain, then pulled back to show he was standing on an overpass above a sign for Tetsuan Station. He gasped from behind the police line being set up to prevent bystanders from getting too close, though there was still a crowd past the policeman with a megaphone. Wow. That's one huge supervillain, Izuku exclaimed. An opening plays. That guitar riff with All Might is so cool, Denki said in amazement. Hey, look, it's us, Toru said excitedly as Class 1A was shown in their hero costumes, along with their names. Hey Midoriya, why do you look so sad? Itsuka asked, seeing the on-screen Izuku walk with his head down. She was only greeted by silence. Then she heard sobbing from the seat he shares with Ochako. Everyone turned and saw that Izuku had a blanket covering him, his head in the brunette's lap as she whispered comforting words while she played with his hair. I don't feel like answering Izuku said between sobs. His friends wanted to ask him what was wrong, but Ochako glared at them and they turned back to the screen. Class A flinched, seeing Shigaraki reach towards the camera. Who's the man with the hand on his face? Nito asked, making Mei, Hitoshi, and Class B wonder as well. I think the show will reveal his identity. Itsuka said. It's the fight with the villains at the USJ? Hanta pointed out. Don't tell me we're going to have to watch that happen again. Minoru cried out. All Might's fight with that Nomu, Ajiro said. Oh man, I can't wait to get to that part again. It was so manly. Mr. Aizawa, you looked so cool fighting all those villains just now. Mina praised her teacher. Aizawa shrugged. I'm your teacher. It's my responsibility to protect you all. I was just doing my job, but thank you, Ashido. Everyone quieted down as the intro song wound down to an end, showing the whole class posing in front of the school in their costumes. Mina took out her phone and took a picture and said, This is going in the group chat. So this show is about Class A? Tetsu grumbled. Itsuka put her hand on his shoulder. Mr. Sinclair did say that the show was based on Midoriya's life. It's no surprise that it would show his class as well. The first incident was in Qingqing City. An extraordinary child was born who radiated light. The students chuckled seeing the terrified father, who was looking at a baby radiated in light. After that, reports of people with superpowers popped up across the globe. No one knew what was causing these quirks. Before long, the supernatural became the totally normal. Dreams, a reality. All Might in his hero form and costume was shown, walking down a dark hallway. The world became a superhuman society, with 80% of the population possessing some uncanny ability. Our streets looked like scenes from comic books. A city swirled with chaos and confusion. A new profession dominated our collective consciousness. The students and parents cheered while the teachers smiled except Aizawa, who simply rolled his eyes, seeing the on-screen All Might. The villain roared, striking an electrical tower. It was an age of heroes. Imagine explaining this to people who don't even know quirks exist. They would compare this to a comic book? Hanta said. Nice comparison, Midobro. Aijiro smiled then remembered that Izuku was laying down in Ochako's lap. Deku said thank you, Kirishima. Ochako said and turned to Aijiro, who nodded. Alistair and I were from a world where quirks do not exist. Giselle said nonchalantly. Everyone except Izuku turned to look at the hosts in shock. Alistair sighed and paused the show. Giselle dear, you can't say something like that and not expect a reaction. Giselle looked at her husband with a smile. I'm an impatient gal, Alistair. There's no reason in letting them have the fun. So how old are you two? Minoru asked. Giselle pretended to be hurt by Minoru's question and gasped dramatically. You can't just ask a lady her age. You're such an actress, Alistair said. In our world we lived during the 21st century. That was 200 years ago, Momo stated. Correct. I worked as a fashion designer and Alistair was a CEO of a robotics company. Giselle said. Hush, Giselle. We're wasting time talking about outside stuff. Moving on. Alistair unpaused the show. Oh nice, way to go Death Arms. A civilian cheered as the silver-haired hero in yellow and blue caught the electrical tower. The punching hero. I wish I had a quirk that made me super strong. Ropes of water began to appear controlled by a hero dressed as a firefighter. Everyone please stay back. This area is far too dangerous. Whoa, the rescue specialist, Backdraft, is here. He'll make sure we're okay. Why are the police so incompetent? Why is Backdraft doing crowd control? Aizawa asked, narrowing his eyes at the screen. This guy must be pretty desperate to go full monster in a city. Do you know what happened? A man in a suit asked the guy next to him. Just some amateur. Stole someone's bag and got himself cornered. The other man said. A quirk like that and he's just a petty thief. The man in the suit said as Izuku was making his way through the crowd. The heroes stiffened. People always looked at the quirk, not the person. They both know that the quirk does not make the person. I got held up. Train's out, another villain. I'm not sure when I'll make it into the office. Another man in a suit said into his phone as Izuku walked to the front of the crowd. Aizawa muttered something about problem children and crowds. Present Mike patted his shoulder sympathetically. A shadow jumps over the crowd. A group of schoolgirls squealed in excitement. It's Kamui. We're your biggest fans. I hope I get that type of recognition and appreciation when I go pro. Denki said as he watched the wood hero fight the giant villain. Yeah. Popular heroes get all the girls. Minoru agreed. The students either snorted or gave him sideways glances. The teachers looked on in disapproval while Aizawa and Nizu wrote it down as things they need to talk about. Izuku made his way to the front where he reached Backdraft's barrier. This is going to be good, he exclaimed. It's Kamui Woods. He may be new but he's making a big name for himself. You look so happy, Deku. Ochako smiled down at her best friend. You got a front seat at the action? It was my first time seeing a villain fight up close. I didn't want to miss it. Izuku whispered. One look at that dopey grin and I know what you are. An older man who had some kind of star-shaped antennae protruding from the top and sides of his head stated. He grinned at Izuku and pointed as he lightly accused the teenager of being a fanboy. Sort of. Izuku said, looking away shyly. That's Midoriya for you. Mina exclaimed as most of his classmates chuckled, knowing how obvious it was. The guy's right. So you said. He knew what you were in an instant. All Might chuckled at the on-screen version of his successor. Kamui Woods ran towards the villain. The giant villain tried to swat Kamui but he dodged and jumped on the villain's hands as he used his arm to extend and latch onto the villain's other wrist. The villain threw Kamui but he landed on top of one of the trains. Assault, robbery, illegal use of powers during rush hour traffic. You are the incarnation of evil. The Sinclairs rolled their eyes. That giant is far from the incarnation of evil. Giselle thought. The students laughed as they heard Kamui's attempt at a catchphrase. Even Izuku gave a little smile. Nizu chuckled, Present Mike snorted and even Aizawa rolled his eyes. That's so dramatic. Mina laughed as she held her sides. Remind me to think of better material when we go pro. Denki said to Minoru. Only if you help me with the same. Minoru said. Is Kamui always this wound up? Midnight asked, turning to All Might. All Might shrugged. He took his job seriously at the Kamino Ward raid. There, his special move. Izuku exclaimed, pointing at Kamui. Come on, Tree Man, show us something flashy, the man said to Kamui. The preemptive binding lacquered chain prison. Both Kamui Woods and Izuku exclaimed as the hero launched his ultimate move. Careful, Midoriya. Your inner fanboy is showing. Hanta said as on screen Izuku repeated along Kamui. Canyon Cannon. Kamui Wood's ultimate move was interrupted by a sudden flying kick from a giant hero who burst into the scene at the last second, knocking the villain off the overpass. Izuku, the older man, death arms and backdraft looked at the newcomer. She stood up in front of the downed villain, the show's camera centered on the curve of her butt. Lines of men with cameras suddenly appeared beside Izuku. Money shot. Money shot. Money shot. Piece of cake for the world's next hottest hero, the giant woman states with a breezy, dismissive tone. Hi everyone. I'm MD Lady, and you don't need to worry about this bum anymore. She greeted, winking and emphasizing her giant but at the word. Money shot. Money shot. Money shot. Izuku started going through his backpack as the older man was blushing at the sight of the new female hero. Midoriya, you never told us that you were at MD Lady's debut. Minoru shouted. Didn't she traumatize you during your internship with her? Denki asked. It doesn't matter. She's still hot. I thought you would understand, Kaminari. Minoru narrowed his eyes at the electric user, who simply shrugged. Ladies, what lesson do we take from this vulgar display? Momo asked with a look of discomfort. Don't do exactly what she did during her debut. The girls said in unison. Wait, she's getting all the credit? Kamui asked as he stood there as Lady waved at the crowd, shrinking down. Poor Kamui. He wanted his chance to shine. But Lady took it away from him. Midnight shook her head. That skank Takayama. Always taking the spotlight and attention for herself. Explosive increase in criminal activity. While governments were stuck to figure out how to reform laws with quirks in mind, courageous people started performing heroic acts to keep our city safe, protecting us against villains who abuse their powers for evil. With overwhelming public support, heroes found an official place as peacekeepers overseen by the government. Those who performed the best got all the fame and glory. Their careers depended on their ability to stay in the spotlight. Izuku narrated as a yellow light illuminated Kamui Woods on his knees, while a purple light lit up the face of MT Lady. What is with that face? Mina cringed. Minoru flinched and covered his eyes. Izuku stood in front of the crater that the giant villain made when he got kicked by MT Lady. Gigantification, huh? Well, she's definitely got the looks and attitude to be a crowd favorite and her quirk is really showy. But it will be kind of hard for her to get around much in the city without damaging lots of things. That means she might not be very useful. He muttered as he wrote in his notebook. The students and teachers looked on in astonishment as the on-screen Izuku muttered up a storm while he took notes. So that's the famous Midoriya muttering. I heard it once when I told him about the final exam, but I never actually understood what he said. Itsuka said, I always knew you had an analytical mind, Midoriya, but I didn't know you processed things that fast. You saw a lady only once and you had her all figured out. Momo said to Izuku. It's just a hobby of mine, Yaoyorozu. It's nothing big. Izuku said. So MT Lady could have stuck to a rural area, but she decided to come to the city for fame and glory, Mina said. Most of the students shrugged as if they were not surprised by that. What's that, fanboy? You taking notes over there? You want to be a hero too, huh? The older man encouraged Izuku. He turned to look at the man. Just more than anything, Izuku said with a big smile. Now that's a smile that can win a girl's heart, Setsuna said, and the girls nodded in agreement. Where have you been hiding that smile, Deku? Ochako asked with a blush on her cheeks, rubbing her finger against Izuku's cheek. It's the first time that someone believed in me being a hero, Izuku said, a small smile on his face. Ochako felt her heart shatter. But that didn't matter now. He needed her like she needed him. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against Izuku's. You are a hero, Deku. Izuku sighed happily. Ochako knew it wasn't enough to ease the pain in her heart, but she cared about her hero and that was more important. He was going to see his past again. She needed to be there for him. A title card popped up, Episode 1, Izuku Midoriya, Origin. So this is your origin story, Midoriya? This seems like private information, Ida said, looking at his best friend. Are you sure you want us to see this, Midoriya? Tsuyu asked. Izuku whispered something to Ochako. She smiled as he whispered in her ear. Deku said he's okay with what you will see. He trusts all of us with his secrets. Midoriya, you truly are a special person. Thank you, Fumikage said, bowing his head. The scene transitioned to Aldera Middle School. A teacher in the front began speaking. So, as third-year students, it's time to start thinking seriously about your futures and what you want to do with your lives. I could pass out some career aptitude tests, but why bother? The students in the front activated their quirks. I know you all want to go to the hero track. The teacher threw the papers into the air. The students started using their quirks. He still should have handed them out. Aizawa scowled. I guess nobody taught them about quirk usage in class. Juzo Hananuki said, shaking his head. Yes. You have some very impressive quirks. But no power usage in school. Get a hold of yourself. Hey teach. Aldera Katsuki interrupted the teacher with his feet on his table. Don't lump me in with these bunch of losers. I'm the real deal. But these guys will be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some busted-up D-lister. So Bakugo's always been like this. No surprise there. Kyoka said as the boys' class jeered at him. You think you're better than us, Katsuki? Let's go. I'll take you all on. You got some impressive test results. Maybe you will get into UA High. He's going to try for the national school? That school has a 0.2 acceptance rate. It's impossible to get into. He got in somehow, so I guess he was big brain Bakugo back in middle school also. Denki said. Shut your mouth, Sparky. Katsuki shouted. That's exactly why it's the only place worthy of me, Katsuki said with a prideful look on his face as he stood on top of his desk. I aced all the mock tests. I'm the only one at this school who stands a chance of getting in. I'll end up more popular than All Might himself, and be the richest hero of all time. People all across the world will know who I am, and it all starts with UA High. Good luck being popular with that attitude. Tetsu grumbled. Arrogant much, Bakugo? Terest. Young Midoriya is right. He really is prideful to a fault. All Might shook his head. Aizawa narrowed his eyes at the scene. Oh yeah, Midoriya, don't you want to go to UA too? The teacher asked bluntly. Izuku put his head down, wanting to disappear. Katsuki's form turned white as he was frozen in shock. The whole class started laughing at him. Midoriya, you're kidding, right? There's no way that you're going to get into UA without a quirk. The eyes of the students widened at the exclamation and looked at Izuku while Hitoshi looked at him in realization. Even though they were discriminated against for different reasons, he and Izuku were alike. The hero student was bullied in middle school for being quirkless while he was feared for having a quirk that seemed villainous. Everything he said during their match, he was completely wrong. Wait, what? Midoriya, you have a quirk. We saw it at the sports festival. You did all that insane stuff against Todoroki, what the hell, man? Tetsu exclaimed. Midoriya, you have one of the most powerful quirks in our year. Setsuna said, disbelief in her eyes. Guys, I don't want to talk about it. Just please keep watching. Izuku begged his classmates. Everyone turned back to the screen. Well, actually they got rid of that rule. I could be the first one. Katsuki exploded Izuku's table, breaking it in half. The green-haired boy was blown away, landing hard on his rear end while the blonde raged. Katsuki! Mitsuki yelled from her seat. What is wrong with you? Class A and B grumbled even more, seeing how a fellow classmate was being bullied nonstop. That teacher is doing nothing to stop this. Present Mike pointed out with a scowl. I'm guessing that Bakugo always pulled a stunt like this with Midoriya and the teachers turned the other way. When we get back to UA, I will have that school investigated and shut down immediately. Nizu growled. Listen up, Dad. Katsuki looked maniacal as his hand was smoking. You're even worse than the rest of these damn rejects, you quirkless wannabe. You really think they'd let someone like you in when they could have me? Even Bakugo is calling him quirkless again. Ijiro muttered. He was used to Katsuki, but seeing this side of him, he realizes he never knew the guy. Izuku scrambled to put distance between himself and his far more aggressive and violent classmate, holding out his hand and scooting backwards until his back touched the classroom's back wall to make himself look smaller. No. Wait. You've got it all wrong, really. I'm not trying to compete against you. You've got to believe me. It's just that. He looked down, seemingly not daring to face any of his classmates as he confessed his dreams. I've wanted to be a hero since I was little. I may not have a quirk, but I can still try my hardest, can't I? Izuku felt Ochako's hand go through his hair. He looked up and could see the wet shine of tears in her eyes. You can do it, Midoriya. Ibara Shiozaki said softly. You'd never be able to hang with the best of the best. You'd die in the exams. Katsuki's image and those of Izuku's classmates became red-eyed and mouthed black silhouettes with jagged outlines and spiky teeth against an ominous purple background. Defenseless Izuku, Katsuki taunted as Izuku flinched inwards. This school's already crappy. You really want to embarrass it more by failing so hard? Bakugo is scary, Reiko Yanagi said, and Yui nodded in agreement. I'm getting chills, Minoru said. Bakugo looked like a real monster there. Yuga agreed. In fact, he kind of looked like a villain. 12:02 p.m., the same city. A woman screamed out. The scene transitions to a woman protected in a force field and a man runs out of a store with his fist raised. Hey, get back here. Someone stop that monster. I'm no villain, Sparkles. Katsuki yelled over the on-screen scream. I'm gonna be a hero, don't you forget it? Yell all you want, sucker. This cash is mine. It's that sludge villain from the news. Yosetsu Owaze stated. The voice of the sludge villain had Izuku gasp out. He felt his heart quicken with the beat of the background music as bystanders talked. The back of an emaciated man was shown as he walked out of a convenience store, overhearing the citizens. Remember when we didn't have to worry about randos with quirks all the time? Seriously, there's no stopping them. The skeletal figure hunched for a second before his body expanded, growing tall and buff, becoming a person anyone would recognize. Yes, there is. It's All Might, Denki exclaimed. You know why? The man asked as the civilians who'd been standing in front of the door suddenly became excited. The laughing sludge villain looked back, terror piercing him at the sight of All Might's smile. I am here. I didn't know he would be making an appearance this early, Tenya stated as the show's title card appeared. He turned to Izuku. That must mean All Might plays a part in your origin, Midoriya? Izuku nodded his head. Why, so I guess that's how he kept his secret for so long, Hanta said. Nobody would know it was him when he wasn't bulked out because he looks totally different. Back at Aldera, class seemed to have ended. Izuku was scrolling on his phone, smiling. That fight from the morning is all over the news. I better write some notes down before I forget anything. Ochako smiled as her on-screen Izuku mentioned the morning's hero fight. You look better when you're happy, Deku. Izuku whispered. Thanks, Uraraka. Izuku was about to put away his notebook when Katsuki snatched it right out of his hand and stood over him. I don't know what you think you're doing, Deku, but we're not done. Just leave him alone, you jerk. Kyoka snapped. It's the past, Kyoka, Momo reminded her. You can't change what happened. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Kyoka grumbled in her seat. Don't tell me you're taking notes on how to be a hero. One of Bakugo's two lackeys laughed at the sight of Izuku's hero analysis for the future number 13 notebook. That's so pathetic. He's delusional. The other lackey mocked. Izuku looked between the two bullies and Katsuki as they picked on him. Yeah, real funny guys. Just give it back. Katsuki slammed the notebook between his fists, making an explosion that torched Izuku's pride as the boy made a distressing wail before whimpering. That's so mean. Ochako turned and glared at the blonde boy. I swear, Bakugo, when I get my hands on you, let's see how you react to getting your face planted into the floor. I'd like to see you try, round face. Katsuki glared back. Uraraka, please don't. Izuku whispered. It's okay. No, it's not, Deku. Please don't believe that what he is doing is acceptable. Ochako said, sadness in her voice. I know. You're right. I'm sorry. Izuku said, before Ochako leaned down and pressed her forehead to Izuku's once more. With an unsettling amount of casual disinterest, Katsuki tossed the torched notebook over his shoulder, where it flew outside the open window. Izuku reached for it in a panic, but it was already well beyond his grasp. Bakugo! That's not how a future hero acts. Tenya exclaimed. This is disgraceful. He has no compassion for other people. Itsuka muttered as others grumbled at the display. Katsuki tried not to be bothered by the angry look Ijiro was sending his way. Most first-string heroes show potential early on. People look at them and just know they're destined for greatness. When I'm the only student from this garbage junior high to get into UA, people will start talking about me like that. They'll realize I'm legit, the next big thing. That's not ego talking, I just know I'm good. Ego, one of his lackeys thought, looking at the smug expression on Katsuki's face. Yeah, totally ego. Everyone thought. Katsuki's hand was on Izuku's shoulder, giving the green-haired boy a malicious grin. Smoke came from his hand. He was causing his nitro sweat to burn into Izuku's shoulder. Here's a little word of advice, nerd. Don't even think of applying or else. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. Setsuna cringed at the sight of the on-screen Izuku's smoking shoulder. All Izuku could do in response was whimper. He was frozen to the spot without an ounce of courage. The bullies started to leave, their expressions satisfied with the result. That's just sad, one of them began. I thought you at least had some fight in you. He finally gets it. He'll never be a hero. Better to find out now instead of later, I guess, the other lackey said. Bakugo. What is wrong with you? Ijiro asked, looking ashamed. Katsuki glanced back behind him towards Izuku. His expression seemed kind, and actually somewhat nice. He still looked a little stuck up, but he'd lost all the rage and condescending demeanor. You know, if you really want to be a hero that badly, there actually might be another way. Everyone's eyebrows perked up as the on-screen Katsuki spoke. Izuku closed his eyes and prepared for what was coming next. Just pray that you'll be born with a quirk in your next life, and take a swan dive off the roof of the building. Izuku turned around and glared at Katsuki with tears at the base of his eyes, growling. The blonde raised his right hand up, explosions bursting around his fingers. Something wrong? Izuku froze again, whimpering in terror at the implied threat. Alistair shook his head and paused the TV. Mitsuki cried in her seat, angry at what her son said, while Masaru sat there in shock. There was a tense silence in the air as the faces of the students depicted horror, shock, and anger. They looked towards the broken Izuku, then at the ash-blonde hair boy in the fourth row, who looked away. They felt sick to their stomachs that they were in the same theater with a person who tried to suicide bait a boy he once called his friend. All the grumbling from before exploding into full-out yelling. Nito, who despised Class 1A, despised bullies even more as he yelled at the ash-blonde hair boy. Ochako wanted to slap Katsuki right there, but she was tending to a broken Izuku. Nobody noticed the mop of green hair making its way towards Katsuki. Slap. All the yelling stopped and everyone except Izuku, whose eyes were closed but heard the slap, stared wide-eyed at the green-haired mother who looked so calm and happy, breathing heavily as there was a red mark on Katsuki's cheek. Auntie? Katsuki stuttered, looking at the angry mother. You do not get to call me that, Katsuki. Not after what you said to my son. For 11 years, you tormented, bruised and beaten Izuku because you couldn't stand that he had no quirk. He looked up to you as a brother, and what did you do? You took advantage of his innocence and kindness because you knew that he would never tell your mother. You knew if she found out, she would not spare you. You told my baby to take a swan dive off the roof. Is that the kind of person you are, Katsuki Bakugo? You should be ashamed of yourself. Inko started to walk away but fell to her knees and sobbed. Izuku said as he sat up. Ochako held his arm, scared that he would disappear if she let go as he gave his mom a hopeful look. Mom, I'm still here. I won't leave you, not ever. Tenya got up from his seat and went to the fourth row to bring Inko to her son. He glared at Katsuki for hurting his best friend as he went back to his seat. She hugged the two kids in front of her, sobbing. Izuku and Ochako hugged her tightly, crying with her. All Might got up from his seat, stopped at Katsuki's row, glared at him and went to the third row and knelt beside Izuku. I'm sorry. As your teacher, hero and mentor, I have failed you. Might whispered sadly. No, All Might. Don't say that. You did nothing wrong. I'm grateful for everything you have done for me. I'm sorry, young Izuku. He joined the hug as they all cried together. Why would you say something like that, Bakugo? Why? Mina cried out. I was sick of him, always trying to act like a hero when he was quirkless. Katsuki said, looking down. You probably don't know what being bullied feels like. People like me, with mutations, we get bullied too and it hurts. Mina starts to cry. Ijiro hugs her and tries to comfort her. Ijiro glared at Katsuki. There's not a lot of things I hate, but one thing I do hate is bullying. Words like that hurt. What you say may mean nothing to you, but they affect us. They stay with us and last forever. Do you think I wear a mask for fun? Mizo asked, fury in his voice. Aizawa stood up from his seat. When it is time for us to go about our day, Bakugo and Midoriya, the teachers and I will be having a talk with you too, and your parents are welcome to join us if they'd like. Yes, sir. Izuku said as the three people engulfed the boy with their warmth. His voice was steady. Katsuki nodded. Aizawa sat back down. Present Mike touched his shoulder and gave his best friend a sad look. The erasure hero leaned back into his seat with a heavy sigh. Inko kissed Izuku on the forehead and All Might gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze before they returned to their seats. Alistair pressed play. Aldra Izuku walked along the school grounds. That idiot, he thought. You can't go around telling people to kill themselves. If I jumped, what would he do then? Katsuki looked at the screen with widened eyes. He never thought of what would have happened if Izuku did jump. Then again, the nerd would never think of actually doing it, right? Katsuki Bakugo, you are an idiot? Katsuki thought, smacking his forehead. One can go to prison for instigating suicide. Nizu stated. Deku. Have you ever thought about it? Ochako asked cautiously. Izuku let out a small laugh. Everyone looked at him in surprise, even Katsuki. Oh, I have not. Never. Izuku said, his eyes glistening. Like I said, I wouldn't leave my mother. My father left to go overseas and has not come back since. If I jumped off the roof, she'd be devastated and all alone. I can't do that to her. Everyone sighed in relief. Inko cried softly. Ochako hugged Izuku tightly. I'm glad you didn't go through with it. I don't know what I would do without you, Izuku. I don't know what I'd do without you either, Ochako, Izuku said, hugging her back. As the two of them were hugging, the majority of the audience smiled at how adorable the two were. The two best friends didn't care that they were saying each other's first names constantly. They meant something more to each other than what was being said out loud. Ochako heard Izuku whisper something to her. When she pulled away, he was blushing a little bit. Did you whisper something to me? Ochako asked. Yeah, I said thank you, Uraraka. Izuku said, smiling. You're welcome, Deku. Ochako said, wrapping the blanket around them and putting her head on his shoulder. So close, but I like it? Izuku thought as he smiled. Oh my god, I just told her that I love her. You idiot, what if she heard you? I do have to tell her at one point. I wonder if she feels the same way about me. While Midoriya, I never thought I would actually hear you say you love Ochako. This is going to be good. Kyoka smirked to herself. My dreams have turned into fish food. That's enough, give it back. Izuku thought as he grabbed his notebook from the koi pond. Damn it. Stupid jerk. The notebook began to blur as little Izuku's voice rang out. Mom, hurry. Little Izuku appeared on screen with a huge smile on his face in a salmon t-shirt, holding a Silver Age All Might figurine. After the tense environment of the last scene, everyone begins to melt at the sight of baby Izuku as ahs were heard throughout the theater. Midnight and the girls cooed at the cuteness on the screen. Come on, Mom. It's computer time, baby Izuku said, jumping up and down. Already? Inko asked her excited bouncing son with an amused smile on her face. She turned the tap off. It's Midoriya and baby Izuku, Mina exclaimed. Midoriya? Izuku and Inko asked simultaneously. She's your mom and she's a Midoriya. So Midoriya. Toru said it like it was the most obvious thing. Faster, let's go. Baby Izuku said. Geez. I think you added 10,000 views to this one yourself, Izuku, Inko said as baby Izuku bobbed his head back and forth. I don't know why you like it. I think it's scary. Baby Izuku squealed in excitement. The video I loved was an old one. Teenage Izuku narrated as his young self leaned towards the monitor. Disaster footage from a long time ago. But it was the debut of the greatest hero the world has ever known. Oh yeah, I remember that video. I had you beat, Midobro. I watched that video at least 15,000 times. Denki said. No way. I watched it at least 20,000 times. Mishiro said. I watched it a lot as a kid. Hanta said. Me too. Rikido said. Same here. Mizo said. Most of the boys from 1B agreed with them. I have you all beat. I watched that video 30,000 times. Ijiro said, smiling. All Might chuckled at their playful banter. He couldn't help but smile warmly, seeing how much he meant to his successor growing up. Who is he? The guy has already saved 100 people at least, and it hasn't even been 10 minutes. This is crazy. I can't believe it. A man begins walking out of the crash. Baby Izuku looked on in excitement as music began to play. Laughter rang out as All Might appeared with several people on his back and in his arms. All Might knew there was no music playing during his Japanese debut. But as he watched it all over again, he wished that it was as heroic as this. Look, he's got more. The background glows white as Izuku smiled. That's bright. Dark Shadow said. Fear not, citizens. Help has arrived. Izuku smiled widely as he watched, his eyes shining. Because I am here. Baby Izuku's hair rises up before falling back to its original state as the white background slowly goes back to his room's background. He's the coolest in the universe. And once I get my quirk, I'm going to be a hero just like him. Baby Izuku declared. Midnight and the girls cooed once more. They couldn't handle the cuteness overload on the screen. Oh my gosh, the cuteness. I can't take it. It's overwhelming. Toru gasped. I know. That smile. The eyes. And oh my gosh, he's actually imitating the laugh now. It's all too much. Mina gushed. Ochako squealed as she watched her best friend's younger self imitate All Might. All Might smiled as he watched the heartwarming scene. Inko watched Baby Izu imitate All Might's signature laugh before turning as her smile shifted into a frown. The scene shifted to a doctor's office as a doctor with glasses and a mustache sat in his chair. Sorry kid, it's not gonna happen. Well, that was unexpected, Mina stated. Izuku's form was white as he was frozen in shock. He dropped his All Might figurine. Oh dear. So you really think there's something wrong then? Most of the other kindergartners in his class have begun to show signs already. Inko asked in concern. My records say you're a 4th-generation quirk user. What powers do you and the boy's father have? Nothing too special. I can float small objects toward me and my husband breathes fire. They're useful enough. Suppose. Inko said, a hand on her cheek as she used her quirk to pick up the figurine with her other hand. But Midoriya's quirk is nothing like the two. Usually children of 2 quirk users can manifest a quirk from either of the parents or is combined from the parents' quirks. Momo explained. Izuku should have already manifested one of these quirks or a combination of both. But after viewing his X-rays, I don't think he's going to. Exactly my point, Momo stated. You see, when superpowers first began to appear, there were many research studies conducted and doctors discovered a link between the bones in a person's foot in their likelihood of developing a quirk. The doctor explained as Inko turned to her son in realization. People with powers have only one joint in their pinky toes. Their bodies have evolved in a more streamlined version of the human form. You can see here that Izuku has 2 joints in his pinky, like roughly 20% of the population these days. Based on the research that's available, it's safe to say your son isn't going to develop a quirk. Everyone looked in shock at the doctor's last sentence, except the Sinclairs, All Might, the Bakugas and Midoriyas. Ochako held Izuku's arm tightly. He looked at her and he could see the shock in her face. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her hero was born quirkless. Inko started crying softly as soon as she heard the sad news once again. The scene shifted to the outside of the Midoriya home as sad music began to play. The sound of All Might's debut video was playing in the background, but the cheery feeling was gone. Inko's head was turned to face the computer and turned around completely towards it when her son called for her. See that, Mom? There's always a smile on his face no matter how bad things get. Even when things seem impossible, he never gives up. Izuku turned his chair to face his mom as she started to cry. The camera turned to Izuku, showing tears in his eyes, pointing at All Might's smile. "Do you think I can be a hero too?" Izuku asked his mom. His mom walks before running forward and collapses to hug her crying son. Inko starts sobbing loudly as a tissue box appears in her hands and she grabs the tissues. Mitsuki tried to comfort Inko as they cried together. The majority of the students broke down into tears, tissue boxes appearing in their hands. Ochako put her arms around Izuku, burying her face in his shoulder as they cried together. The girls from Class A and May cried into their couchmate's shoulder as the boys held them and tried to comfort them or wipe their own tears. Katsuki leaned forward with his head in his hands, regretting everything he did to his childhood friend. He never thought about Izuku's feelings. "I had never expected someone from Class 1A to have a tragic backstory," Itsuka said, wiping her tears with a tissue. "Is there anyone else in your class who also has a tragic backstory?" she asked, looking at Momo. The vice rep shook her head as she wiped her own tears. "If there is anyone who has gone through such a thing, we are not aware." Shoto did not say anything, but he turned to look at Izuku, who held Ochako in his arms. Midoriya. Midnight and Present Mike took off their glasses to dry their eyes. All Might let the tears fall as he looked down, regretting what he said to Izuku that day. Aizawa subtly wiped the tears from his eyes and Nizu was wiping his eyes with his handkerchief. "I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different." "Mom, that's not what I needed you to say. Couldn't you see? My world was crumbling. There was only one thing I wanted to hear." Narrator Izuku said. "What was it?" What did he want to hear his mom say? Minoru asked. "What do you think, you dolt?" Kyoka said, glaring at Minoru while wiping her tears. In the present, teenager Izuku walked home from school, holding his burnt hero notebook in his hand as he stood in front of a pedestrian tunnel. He said, "I made a decision that day. No matter what anyone else thinks, I have to believe in myself and I'll keep smiling just like him." Izuku clenches his fist and starts laughing like All Might as he walks through the pedestrian tunnel. "You're so manly, Midobro. I'm with you for the rest of my life." Ijiro wiped his tears as he held Mina. The teachers and other students cheered at Izuku's determination while a few chuckled at Izuku's on-screen actions, including Izuku. But the smiles from Izuku and All Might melted as quickly as they realized what was about to happen. Slime began to appear from behind Izuku as the sludge villain from before began to form in front of Izuku. "You'd make a perfect skin suit for me to hide in, kid." The sludge villain charged Izuku, suffocating him as he tried to force himself into the teenager's body. Ochako screamed in fear as she held onto the Izuku next to her, hugging him tightly. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere," Izuku said, holding Ochako. "Oh my god, I can't watch this," Kyoka said as she and most of the students covered their eyes. The others had their hands to their mouths as they watched the horrifying scene. Inko, Mitsuki and Masaru put their hands to their mouths, horrified that not only Katsuki was attacked by the sludge villain but also Izuku. Katsuki looked on in shock. He never knew that the nerd got attacked by the sludge villain. But how did he survive without a quirk? He looked over at Izuku. "Don't tell me." "Don't worry, I'm just taking over your body. It'll be easier for the both of us if you don't fight back. It'll only hurt for a minute. You'll feel better soon." "I can't breathe. This is crazy. How much more did you have to suffer, Midoriya?" Tetsu asked as he watched the on-screen Izuku struggle. "I know it looks bad but it gets better," Izuku exclaimed, as his on-screen self was choking and trying to get the sludge villain off him. "This was one of the worst days of my life, but it also ended up being the best day of my life. I'm here with you guys, so trust me. Grab all you want. My body's made of fluid. Thanks for the help. You're a real hero to me, kid." Most of the students looked apprehensive. Ochako closed her eyes tightly, holding on to Izuku. She prayed that someone would save him already. A calm voice said, "Okay then." The students, parents and teachers looked surprised to see it was Katsuki who spoke. "If the nerd tells us to trust him that this gets better, then let's trust him and watch." "I mean sure," Hanta commented. "But no way, this can't be the end," Izuku thought as his vision started to fade, eyes catching sight of a drawing of a hero in his notebook. "Somebody help." The manhole cover within the tunnel flew up into the air. Shocked expressions appeared in the faces of the students, and All Might couldn't help but grin to himself. Now it was time for his entrance. The sludge villain turned around and his eyes widened in shock, terrified at the sight in front of him. The camera panned to the side, revealing All Might. Have no fear, you're safe. He stomped his foot down, dust rising from the concrete as the same heroic music from his debut video started up. Now that I am here, that is. Deku, you were saved by All Might. Ochako squealed, shaking Izuku. Your favorite hero. All Might ducked under the sludge villain's attack. All Might dodged the second attack and wounded his right fist up. Texuous. Smash. He threw his fist forward, a torrent of wind blowing the sludge villain away. Texas represent, Alistair said in English, doing a fist pump. Giselle slapped his arm jokingly when everyone looked at him with a confused look. Pony laughed, understanding what he said. I can't hold it together. His fluid body scattered, leaving Izuku free of the villain. His eyes barely fluttered open, consciousness still fading from having suffocated from the villain's brutal attack. Is that All Might? Izuku's vision went black. That was amazing, All Might. Tetsu cheered along with most of 1A and 1B. Such a manly entrance. Ijiro exclaimed. He's the best. You managed to save Midoriya with just the wind pressure from your punch, Midnight purred. Impressive, All Might. The screen came back, showing All Might repeatedly slapping Izuku's cheek. Hey, wake up. Hey. And then you pull this? Aizawa sighed. All Might had the decency to look sheepish. Izuku's eyes opened fully, taking in the sight of All Might standing over him. Thought we'd lost you there? Izuku screamed. Everyone started to laugh at Izuku's reaction. Yeah, I'd probably do the same if my favorite hero was standing in front of me, Midobro. Ijiro smiled. Leave it to Midoriya being a fanboy to have the honor of being saved by All Might himself. Mina said with a grin. It must be fate. Yuga said with a twinkle in his eye. I didn't mean to get you caught up in my justicing. Usually I pay more attention to keeping bystanders safe, but it turns out this city's sewer system is pretty difficult to navigate. All Might laughed. Yes, that villain probably would have lived in the sewers, Momo said. Anyway, you were a big help. Thank you. I've captured the evildoer. All Might posed, showing the villain contained within the 2 plastic pop bottles that had been in his shopping bag. Stars and stripes appeared all over the screen. Really, All Might? Aizawa asked, narrowing his eyes at the retired #1 hero. That's how you catch a villain? All Might shrugged. I was in a time crunch, Aizawa. The most amazing hero of the entire world, All Might. Izuku was still freaking out. The real thing. In the flesh. Standing right in front of me. He looks so much cooler in person. Ochako smiled as she laughed while holding onto Izuku. She couldn't help it. She watched her heroes on screen self-react to seeing his favorite hero in person. Yeah, he's way different in person, right? She elbowed Izuku in the gut under the blanket as the screen lit up All Might's smile, and he laughed back. She needed to join in because he must have been nervous after seeing himself get attacked by the sludge villain all over again. Izuku shook his head clear as he realized something. Holy crap. I need to get an autograph. I've got a pen around here somewhere. He gasped, catching sight of his hero analysis notebook. Please sign my notebook. He picked it up and opened it. All Might had already done his best John Hancock, his signature covering 2 whole blank pages of the book. Izuku screamed again. He was bowing intensely. Thank you so much. This will be an heirloom. A family treasure passed down for generations to come. All Might gave a thumbs up, not knowing how to react at the extreme fanboying. Inko laughed as her son bowed intensely to his hero. Katsuki smirked and Shoto started to smile at Izuku's fanboying. It was amusing seeing how Izuku acts to his favorite hero. Wow, Midobro. You must have some strong bones to be bowing like that. Denki said. A family heirloom, Midoriya? Mina grinned mischievously. What do you have to say about that, Ochako? Mina. Ochako turned to look at the pink-skinned girl as Izuku turned beet red. Ashido, stop teasing Uraraka and Midoriya this instant. Tenya said, chopping the air intensely. Well, I've got to get this guy to the police so they can take care of him, All Might said, patting the pocket in his pants where he had secured one of the bottles with the villain. He turned away from Izuku. Stay out of trouble. See you around. Izuku broke out of his fanboying moment. Wait, you're leaving already? Pro heroes are constantly fighting time as well as enemies, All Might answered as he limbered up. He can't go yet, Izuku thought. There are still so many questions I have to ask him. Izuku slapped his palm over his face. Ochako looked at him in shock. Deku? What is it, Midoriya? Tenya asked, concerned. Izuku laughed at himself. It's nothing, just, this is where I do something really dumb. All Might launched into the sky in a powerful jump. Thanks for your continued support. Izuku had latched onto his legs. His eyes and mouth were flapping in the wind. All Might tried to push Izuku off, but he was latched on tightly. Let go. I love my fans, but this is too much. No way we're flying. If I let go now, I'll die. Izuku exclaimed. Oh, that's a good point. The laughter started up all over again. Most of the students, including Denki and Minoru, had to hold their sides as they laughed. Alistair and Giselle had their hands over their mouths as they tried to stop laughing. Present Mike and Midnight were almost falling out of their seats while dying of laughter. Aizawa restrained himself from smacking his palm on his forehead. Problem child? Izuku! Inko shouted, seeing her son's reckless but brave action while Masaru was holding onto a cackling Mitsuki. That was very dangerous, Midoriya, Tenya scolded. You should have thought before you did something so reckless. I was having a really bad day, Ida and my idol saved me out of all people and heroes, Izuku countered, trying to contain his laughter. I couldn't just let him go. Ochako wiped a tear from her eye. Deku, you're crazy. I just have a lot of things I want to ask you personally. You're my all-time favorite hero, All Might please. Izuku stated while his jaw was flapping completely in the wind. That started the laughter all over again while Izuku was covering his face in embarrassment. Okay, I get it. Just keep your eyes and mouth shut. All Might coughed, a bit of blood leaking out past his clenched teeth. Shit. That sobered the crowd up. Setsuna tilted her head. Hey, is All Might sick? We saw what was presumably his skeletal form bulk up earlier, Momo reasoned. But this is the first clue this show is giving us that something is actually wrong with All Might. All Might and Izuku landed on the roof of an office building. The latter looked like he might pass out again. My whole life flashed before my eyes. All Might pressed his fists to his hips. Not a very smart move, he said to get his scolding across. Bang on the door for a while, someone will let you in. Now I have to go. See you on the flip side. Denki raised an eyebrow and stared at All Might on screen. For real? Did he just say that? Wait, not yet. 1 second. Izuku pleaded. No. I don't have any time. I have to know. The students tensed up. Hey, Minoru began. So I'm guessing this is when Midoriya asks All Might if he can become a hero, right? He looked around. That's what this was building up to, after all. It certainly seems so. Mina agreed. Izuku thinks about the many things people told him in the future. Sometimes I do feel like a failure, like there's no hope for me. But even so, I'm not going to give up, ever. Izuku looked up at All Might as the greatest hero walked towards the edge of the roof. Is it possible to become a hero even if I don't have a quirk? All Might stopped. I'm a normal kid without any powers, Izuku continued. Could I ever hope to be someone like you? The music swelled as All Might half-turned at his words too. Look back at Izuku. Meeting All Might was a dream come true, narrator Izuku stated. A real miracle. Standing in front of me was the hero I'd idolized most of my life. I didn't realize it at the time, but that chance encounter would change the course of my future. The ending theme started. Ah man. Denki whined. That's how it ends? It's a dramatic stopping point, Momo pointed out. Ochako shook Izuku. Deku, what did he say to you? Tell me please. Izuku tried to contain his laughter as he was being shaken. Sorry Uraraka, no spoilers. In the ending theme, Izuku's notebook is shown with the drawing of his hero costume. Izuku, in his Aldra uniform, is running towards a star, which symbolizes his dream to become a hero. The scene transitions to baby Izuku playing with his All Might figurine, imitating All Might. The scene transitions back to Aldra Izuku running until it is sunrise. In black and white, little Izuku is shown crying and transitions to teenage Izuku crying. Everyone looked away as some of them cried silently. Nobody cried louder than the Midoriyas while Mitsuki and Ochako tried to comfort them. They finally stopped crying once the song ended. Class 1A and the teachers made an unspoken and silent agreement. Izuku Midoriya was never going to cry again. Everyone jumped when they heard All Might's music. All Might's voice rang out. Never fear, adoring public. I am here for the next episode preview. That goo villain has taken a boy hostage and is running amok the town. This isn't good. But I can't use my powers much longer. The number 1 hero groaned. You're a pathetic fraud, All Might. Next time, what it takes to be a hero. We pros risk our lives for it's our duty to put our quirks to the test and go beyond our limits. Plus ultra. The majority of the students and teachers yell out the school motto. I guess I forgot to mention that there is also the next episode preview. My mistake, ladies and gentlemen. Alistair apologized. A timer appears on top of the movie screen. You have 15 minutes for chit-chat and bathroom breaks. Don't waste time or we will start without you, Giselle said jokingly. In the front of the theater, everyone except Katsuki came to give Izuku a hug one by one, even Hitoshi, Nito and Aizawa. You're not alone anymore, Midori. Mina promised. Yeah man. You're part of our family, Ajiro said. Class 1A sticks together to the end, Momo stated. We're with you, Deku. Ochako smiled. We may not be part of your class but we consider you as family, Itsuka said and most of 1B nodded. Thanks, you guys. That means a lot. Izuku's eyes were red but he smiled brightly. Wow, that's bright, Dark Shadow said. All Might hugged him and whispered, they are not going to be happy to see what will happen on that roof. I'm aware. I'm ready to defend you on your point. Was I upset? But you were right at the time. You are a good man, young Midoriya. I know I have chosen wisely. All Might smiled at Izuku who smiled back. The one person nobody expected to approach Izuku did exactly that. Ochako stepped in front of Izuku to defend him. Izuku put his hand on her shoulder and she turned to look at him. He smiled and she moved out of the way. Izuku approached Katsuki Bakugo, who was looking down at the floor. Duh. Izuku, I'm sorry for everything I have done and said. I was a brat and you did not deserve what I have done to you. I understand if you hate me. I'm sorry, Izuku. Kaken, I don't hate you. I was hurt that somebody I looked up to treated me like that. But I never held that against you. You are meant to be a hero, even if the way you act sometimes doesn't symbolize one. Despite our past, I am sure that you will redeem yourself in the future, Izuku said with a smile and held out his hand. Katsuki smiled. They shook hands. The blonde was about to cry but he remembered that everyone was watching so he glared at them. What the fuck are you all staring at? That's so manly. Ijiro sniffled. Group hug? Wait, what? I'll kill you. Katsuki protested as Izuku laughed. Even Aizawa was protesting as everyone pressed together for a group hug. A few minutes later, all of them separated because Katsuki looked like he was going to explode. He took a few breaths and looked at everyone. So since the show is based on the nerd's life, it's going to show what I've done to him. I apologize in advance because you extras are going to look at me as if you want to kill me, especially Pink Cheeks because she likes the nerd, as if he'll get a girlfriend before me. But don't think I'm not going to explode when the nerd gets complimented. Don't be surprised by the harsh criticism you'll get from your fellow classmates and your parents, Bakugo. Kyoka smirked. Shut it ears. Katsuki shouted out. And he's back. Fumikage shook his head. Gigi girlfriend? Izuku stuttered. You made him embarrassed? Ochako pouted as she crossed her arms. Shut up, Bakugo. I never said anything like that. Aha, keep living in denial, though. Mina smiled mischievously. Mina, not you too. Ochako cried out in exasperation. That's enough. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. If Uraraka and the problem child have something to discuss on this, they will do it privately. Am I clear? Yes, sir. Class 1A said. As for Class B, Shinso and Hatsum, I am the designated homeroom teacher while we are here. Is that clear? Yes, sir. Now off you go. Aizawa shooed the students off. Katsuki walked over to the couple sitting in the love seat. I'm sorry for the way I acted towards you. It was wrong of me. I promise it won't happen again. He bowed to them. Apology accepted, Katsuki. Alistair and Giselle said, smiling. Everyone split off and went about to talk or use the bathroom. Izuku and All Might sat down in their seats, thinking about the next episode. The timer reached 1 minute until the start of the next episode. Everyone was going back to their seats. Izuku and All Might sat back in their seats so they could prepare for the shock and chaos that will undoubtedly erupt in their faces. Is everyone seated? Giselle asked, holding the remote in her hand. When she saw the timer reach 0 and everyone were in their seats, she pressed the play button. Let us begin. The episode started with preschool Izuku watching All Might's debut video. It should be a crime to be this cute, Midori. Mina said, watching little Izuku get so excited. Sorry kid, it's not gonna happen. The doctor said, shooting down Izuku's hopes. It's so unsettling to see a classmate with such power being deemed quirkless. Momo said, frowning at the screen at a shocked Izuku. Aldra Izuku stood on the roof with All Might, wanting to ask his question. Even if I'll never have superpowers? The teenager thought as Katsuki's taunts from earlier were shown. Even if everyone thinks I'm useless? Inko hugged her son as they cried. I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different. The majority of the audience looked at the screen sadly as they watched the heartbreaking scene again. Mom, that's not what I needed you to say. Couldn't you see? Izuku. Inko wiped her tears with a tissue. Despite everything, I still dream and I have to know. Aldra Izuku thought, clenching his fist. Is it possible to become a hero even if I don't have a quirk? Izuku asked All Might before he reached the edge. I'm a normal kid without any powers. Could I ever hope to become someone like you? He closed his eyes with a nervous blush in his cheeks. All Might and Izuku steeled their nerves for what was coming next. They were prepared for the barrage of questions that were about to come their way. All Might stopped and half-turned to look back at Izuku. Without a quirk? A jolt of yellow light flashed across the screen and the hero jerked in pain. All Might, should we be scared? Mina asked, looking on in worry as the on-screen All Might hunched over, steam beginning to swirl all around his body. It's all right, young Ishido. All Might said with a wave of his hand. Oh no, he whispered to himself. Damn it. Not here. Aizawa turned to look at All Might. Don't tell me that he found out on that rooftop? He asked the retired pro hero. All Might nodded his head and the teachers sighed. The screen returned to Izuku, who was looking down after finally asking his question, rambling on and trying to explain himself. People think I don't have a chance, that not having any powers makes me some kind of weakling. My classmates like to make fun of me. But you know what, that makes me want to prove them wrong. Ever since I was a kid, I've thought that saving people was the coolest thing you can do. The students and adults stared at the on-screen Izuku's oblivious nature as he looked anywhere but the steam that was coming off the number one hero's body. Midoriya, as much as I commend you on your ability to speak your mind, at least be aware of your environment and surroundings, Tenya said with an amused smile. I was nervous and I couldn't dare to look him straight in the eye. Izuku said, scratching the back of his head. Most of Class B looked over at Izuku in sympathy while Class A facepalmed themselves. I want people to see my fearless smile and feel safe, and be the kind of hero everyone in the world looks up to. Just like you. The steam faded away to reveal All Might's skeletal form where he was standing originally in his buff form. Izuku's face turned into shock and disbelief before he started screaming. The opening plays. Everyone except Nizu, All Might and the Sinclairs turned to Izuku with shocked expressions. You knew? Mina exclaimed. Yeah, I knew this whole time. Izuku admitted, suddenly interested in his red shoes. Who else knows about his other form? Momo asked. That's not my place to say, Yayorozu. But I will say, getting into UA, I think the teachers knew about his other form, Izuku said, looking at the raven-haired girl. Izawa, Present Mike and Midnight looked at All Might. How did Midoriya know that the teachers were aware of your true form, All Might? Midnight asked the retired number 1 hero. All Might tapped his finger on his chin as he was trying to connect the dots. He widened his eyes. The USJ attack. Cementos saw me and young Midoriya and didn't say anything. What? Izawa asked, narrowing his eyes. All Might looked sheepishly at the homeroom teacher before turning back to the screen. In the Tatooine shopping district, the camera zoomed in on the bottle that the sludge villain was trapped in as he started waking up. Where am I? What happened? It's the sludge villain. How did he get there? Denki pointed out. He must have fallen out when me and All Might were in the air. I'm an idiot, Izuku said nervously. He smacked himself in the head. Sorry, Kaken. Katsuki grumbled under his breath but took a deep breath. It's in the past now, Deku. Don't overthink it. Deku, you're not an idiot. You didn't know that the bottle would fall out of All Might's pocket. But what does Bakugo have to do with this? Ochako looked at Izuku, frowning. Just watch, Izuku said as the sludge villain blamed All Might for not getting out of town as Katsuki and his lackeys were walking in that general direction. That was rough. Weren't you and Midoriya good friends back when you were kids? One of Katsuki's lackeys asked. Yeah, you were a little harsh with him today, the other lackey said. At least those two were not as heartless as Bakugo, Toru said. It's his own fault for getting in my way, Aldra Katsuki said. Yeah, because sitting in his seat and minding his own business is a crime these days. Kyoka grumbled. Shut it ears. Katsuki glared at Kyoka. Katsuki kicked the bottle in the air, causing the cap to burst off when it hit a pole. The majority of the audience face-bombed themselves. Now we know how the sludge villain got free, Itsuka said. You shouldn't waste your time on the guy. Lackey number 2 said to Katsuki. The blonde flashback to what Izuku said in class about wanting to be a hero as a kid and trying his hardest even without a quirk. Someone's got to teach the worthless nerd how the world really works. Katsuki scowled as he exploded the can in his hand. I hate it when he talks heroes. The teachers gave each other confused looks before they looked down at where Katsuki was sitting. They were perplexed by his younger self's attitude toward Izuku. They found it peculiar that the boy wanted to be a hero, but he was putting down his childhood friend for wanting to be a hero. What were his intentions? These were questions that needed to be asked during their talk. Hey, I got an idea. We should go to the arcade. Get your mind off it, you know? Lackey number 1 said to Katsuki. Fine, Katsuki said. Or we can sneak into the bar at the station, pick up some ladies? Now that's a good idea. Lackey number 2 said. Idiots. If we get caught, there's no way Yue would let me in. Katsuki yelled at the two dolts. You're not worried about hurting your childhood friend all this time, but you're worried about getting caught in a bar and not getting into Yue, right, Katsuki? Mitsuki glared at her son, the anger in her tone. Katsuki flinched when he heard Mitsuki's question, but he ignored it. The two lackeys pointed behind Katsuki in fear. He turned around and saw the sludge villain behind him. Perfect, I like a skin suit with some fire. The sludge villain bared his teeth and Katsuki looked on in fear. Don't tell me, Ochako whispered, looking at Izuku with wide eyes. Izuku nodded. You looked scared there, bro. Denki said. Shut the hell up, Sparky. Katsuki yelled. I wasn't scared. Sure. Denki said sarcastically. Episode 2, What It Takes to Be a Hero. The show cut back to Izuku's scream on the top of the store rooftop, showing All Might's skeletal form. Laughter was heard around the room. Damn, Midoriya, have you been screaming that whole time? Kyoka teased with a small smile. Have you ever thought about joining a band? I never thought about it, but I don't think I'm that great of a singer, Jiro. Izuku scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Nonsense. I'll give you some singing lessons. Freshen those pipes right up. Kyoka offered. Mina clapped her hands in excitement. If that doesn't work out, I'll give you some dancing lessons. You'll be breakdancing in no time, Midori. Midobro/Midoriya. Denki and Minoru exclaimed in jealousy. Wait, what happened, you deflated? Izuku looked around. Where did All Might go? You're not him. You're a fake, an imposter. You're so mean, Deku. Ochako giggled as Izuku lowered himself in his seat. Did Midoriya really think it wasn't you? Present Mike asked, a small smile on his face. Wouldn't you have the same reaction at his age if that was you up there? All Might smirked. Fair point. Present Mike said. I assure that I am all me dash as blood came out of his mouth. As Aldra Izuku screamed again, Ijiro turned to All Might. Sir, is there a reason that blood comes out of your mouth? You'll see, young Kirishima. All Might said. You know how guys at the pool are always sucking in and flexing, trying to look buff? I'm like that. All Might said, wiping the blood from his mouth. He goes from small to buff and calls it flexing. What are you, All Might? Denki asked. This can't be real. Izuku exclaimed, freaking out. I'm dreaming. I think Midoriya is having an identity crisis. Itsuka pointed out. All Might is a giant of a man who saves everyone. He defeats all obstacles and wins the day with a fearless smile. There's plenty of fear behind that smile. All Might said as he sat down. I'm counting on you to keep your mouth shut. Don't go talking about this online or telling your friends. What friends? Nito asked, which caused Izuku and Katsuki to flinch. Itsuka glared at the blonde boy next to her. Monoma. Am I wrong, Kendo? Nito asked. At that time, Midoriya had no friends because of the biggest personality in the neighborhood. Now he has friends in his class and still nobody knew about All Might's condition. There is a connection between All Might and Midoriya that we don't know about. Aldra Izuku flinched in horror as the sound of clothing being lifted was heard. All Might was shown lifting the left side of his shirt up, revealing a gruesome scar that looked like a spiderweb of pavement cracks that lined out from it. None of the students or parents have ever seen the scar. They put their hands to their mouths as their stomachs turned. Even though he already saw it, Izuku felt a little queasy, but he managed to hold it in. The teachers looked away, even though they were aware of the scar. Nizu was the only one who didn't shy away from the sight of the scar. All Might. Denki whispered. No way. Ijiro whispered, eyes wide as saucers. Mina covered her eyes. Oh my god. How? Setsuna asked in fear. Ibra closed her eyes and started praying. Pretty gross, right? I got this in a big fight 5 years back. My respiratory system is basically destroyed. I lost my whole stomach. All the surgeries have pretty much worn me out. It can't be fixed. Right now I can only do hero work 3 hours a day. The rest of the time, this is what I look like. 3 hours a day. Tetsu said in disbelief. But how does he teach if he has to maintain that form? It's impossible. No way. 5 years ago? So does that mean it was that fight with Toxic Chainsaw? Only Midoriya could pull out an All Might fact from the top of his head. Mizo said, I was trying to fight back the disbelief that there is a villain powerful enough to do that to All Might, and Toxic Chainsaw was a strong villain. Izuku said in a low voice. Wow, you know your stuff. But no, All Might clenched his fist. The punk may have landed some hits, but he couldn't bring me down. Most of the world has never heard of this fight. I did everything I could to keep it under wraps. But this is All Might. He's unbeatable. Minoru said nervously. All Might looked in Izuku's direction. I'm supposed to be the guy that's always smiling, right? I'm the symbol of peace. People everywhere have to think I'm never afraid. But honestly, I smile to hide the fear inside. The scene transitioned to Izuku. It's just a brave face I put on when the pressure is high. This job isn't easy. Pro heroes are always having to risk their lives. Some villains can't be beaten without powers. So no, honestly, I don't think you can become a hero without a quirk. No way. The students thought. Everyone except the hosts, Izuku and Katsuki, turned to look at All Might in shock. Alistair and Giselle sigh as they paused the show. Cue the yelling in 3, 2, Alistair counted down. How could you say that to him? Ochako, Mina and Ijiro shout at All Might, who was sitting back in his seat looking calm, but he was internally panicking. All Might, explain yourself. Aizawa glared at the former pro hero. All Might looked nervous as he tried to appease the angry students and teacher. I know what I did was not right. But I didn't want to give him false hope, and 2 things. 1, if I had not arrived sooner, young Midoriya would have died to that monster. 2. If anything happened to him after that, it would have been on my conscience. You didn't need to stomp on his hopes and dreams like that. Toru exclaimed. You guys, he's not wrong. I was upset at the time, but maybe it was for the best. Izuku said. I mean, look at me. I'm here now, aren't I? Izuku said, trying to appease his angry classmates. Alistair unpaused the show. Izuku looked at All Might in disbelief. I see. All Might stood up from his spot. If you want to help people, there are plenty of other ways to do it. You could become a police officer. They get crap because heroes capture most of the villains, but it's a fine profession. He walked towards the door to the roof access. He stopped once he opened it. It's not bad to have a dream, young man. Just make sure your dreams are attainable, realistic. Understand? He closed the door behind him. Izuku could feel Ochako shaking in the blanket. He looked at her and he could see the anger in her eyes. He put his hand on her shoulder. Uraraka, please calm down. But that, your favorite hero crushed your dreams. Ochako said in an icy tone, but her eyes were wet with tears. He didn't know my story. He wasn't aware of what I went through growing up. He was trying to keep me from doing something that would get me killed. Izuku said. Ochako crossed her arms. It doesn't mean that I have to like it. He's right. I didn't know about his past. All Might said. I was thinking of young Midoriya's safety when I said that, but that does not justify what I said, especially what happens later. The students looked at each other in confusion, wondering what he might be referring to. I was losing myself at the time. Young Midoriya is just like me, but I refused to see it because of my own selfishness. I'm sorry, my boy. All Might thought, tears in his eyes. His on-screen self looked around for the bottle containing the sludge villain. An explosion sounded in the distance as All Might turns toward the stairwell window and sees smoke rising. Not good. Izuku was still standing outside in the same spot he'd been in when All Might left him just seconds ago. An explosion sounded in the distance, and he looked up to see a cloud of smoke. A villain? I wonder which hero will show. Here he goes. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. Some villains just can't be beaten without powers. Izuku stopped, a conflicted expression on his face as he remembered the words All Might had just spoken to him. So can you be a hero? Not without a quirk. Thought that prematurely. Aizawa sighed as he watched Aldra Izuku put his head down and walked to the door. Ochako put her head on Izuku's shoulder. I believe you can be a hero without a quirk, she said softly. Izuku blushed as he heard what Ochako said. So close. Thanks, Uraraka, he whispered. Kyoka and Mina looked at each other and smirked. So it's not just Midoriya but Ochako too. This makes Mina's job much easier, Kyoka thought. So this whole time, it's been Midori after all. Mina grinned mischievously. Suspenseful music begins to play as All Might is seen running through the city towards the smoke. Glass broke as civilians in the Tehuan shopping district screamed as they ran away while shop signs were collapsing and fires began to spread. A crowd swarmed the entrance of the district as Death Arms, Slugger and another pro-hero ran to the scene, standing behind two police officers. The sludge villain stood in the middle of the street, surrounded by flames and looked intimidating as Katsuki was held in its fluid body. The camera zoomed in on Katsuki struggling to free himself. Bakubro! Ijiro exclaimed. I'm right here, shitty hair. Katsuki said. Yeah, I know. But still. Shut up and watch. This is nothing. It's taken someone hostage. Death Arms ran towards the sludge monster. How dare you prey on a child? He jumped and punched the sludge monster. Yago Death Arms! Rikido exclaimed. Death Arms punches are quite effective. It's like getting hit by a wrecking ball. Kyoka said. That may be true, but the sludge monster is made out of goo. His punches are just going to sink in. Momo stated as Death Arms punched the villain that I. What the hell is this? Some kind of goo? Death Arms asked in surprise as he tried to pull his hand out. The sludge villain hit Death Arms, throwing him back. He slammed into the shutters of a closed shop, his body denting them with the force of the impact. Brute strength will not work in this situation as it appears, Tenya pointed out. But All Might is the one who saved Bakugo that day, right? He's all about brute strength. Minoru said. There's more to All Might's punches than brute strength, Mineta. Izuku countered. Hang on, Mineta and Midobro. There was also that kid who ran out just before All Might showed up. Kirishima reminded them. Slugger and the other unnamed pro-hero ran up to Death Arms to check on him. They dodged each of the sludge villain's punches. Stay back or I'll snap his neck. The sludge villain sneered. It turned to Katsuki, who managed to free himself from its grasp. You picked the wrong guy to mess with? Katsuki struggled to get out. I'm gonna send you back to whatever sewer you crawled out of. Let me go, Katsuki said as explosions came out of the slimy hands, driving the heroes back. Mitsuki and Masaru watched the scene with worry on their faces. They were aware of what happened to their son. But seeing the events up close, they felt a little scared of what would have happened if All Might didn't save him. You got so much power. I really hit the jackpot. With a quirk like yours under my control, I can take All Might down with one punch. The sludge villain bragged. The students laughed while the teachers chuckled among themselves. Katsuki sucked his teeth, but that didn't stop them from laughing at the exaggeration of his quirk. That monster certainly overestimated Bakugo's power. Those explosions aren't close to even hurting All Might, Momo said, shaking her head but had a small smile on her face. How do you know that, Yamamo? Itsuka asked. Him and Midoriya went against All Might in their final exam. His explosions didn't even faze him. This Bakugo is in middle school, so his explosions wouldn't even tickle All Might, Momo stated. Mitsuki's eyebrows perked up with curiosity. Her son and Izuku fought All Might in their exam and passed. A guy in the crowd was talking about the sludge villain being a legit supervillain while the lady next to him pointed towards MT Lady who was running towards the scene, saying that she will stop him. My only weakness. I need at least a two-legged road if I'm gonna make my way through here. So dramatic, Present Mike said, rolling his eyes. So Midoriya was right. Her quirk is practically useless in an urban setting, Kyoka said. Katsuki's lackeys were panicking as they were surrounded by fire before Kamui used his quirk to grab them. Fire and wood don't exactly make a good combination here. I'll let someone else stop this guy, Kamui said, before running off with the two lackeys and two other people. Don't look at me. I got my hands full here. Where are those fire trucks? Can you guys get to it? Backdraft said as he was putting out the fires. They can't be serious. Aizawa glared at the screen as Backdraft was putting out the fires and Kamui was rescuing civilians. I can't get a grip on his weird body. Plus that kid's quirk is causing explosions left and right. This is a shutout, Slugger stated. We've got to rally and knock him out of the park somehow. The sludge villain had a better grip on Katsuki as he lashed out at Slugger and Death Arms. It's no good. None of us have the right quirks to stop a villain like this, Death Arms exclaimed. We'll do damage control until someone with the right power shows up. Nizu watched the scene in disapproval. Rescuing the hostage should be their top priority. Even if Death Arms is unable to defeat the sludge villain on his own, he can wrestle Bakugo out of its grasp. Midnight shook her head. Such a waste of effort. I'm sorry, kid. You just have to hold on a little bit longer. Damn, if I only had more power, I could blow this guy away, Death Arms stated. Are they serious? Ijiro yelled out. Were they really about to let Bakubro die because they don't have the right quirks? You're right, Kirishima, Aizawa said from his seat. It's not the right course of action, but it's necessary in a case like this. This is going to require a thorough investigation, Nizu said calmly, but he was beyond pissed that such heroes were capable of this level of incompetence. All Might caught up to the site of the explosion. He gasped as he saw the sludge villain through the crowd of onlookers behind the police line. Must have dropped him in the air. I was distracted worrying about my time limit. I can't believe I made such a rookie mistake and after lecturing that kid what it takes to be a hero. I'm pathetic. Izuku felt a twinge of pain in his heart as he heard his hero blame himself. Izuku turned to his mentor. No. It's not your fault, All Might. It's my fault that this all happened. All Might shook his head. No, young Midoriya. This one is on me. You're a middle school student and I'm a pro hero. It was my mistake to get distracted easily, not yours. He's right, Midoriya, Tenya said. Don't let this mistake burden you. Deku, Ochako reassured him. It's not your fault this happened. Aldra Izuku walked down the street while looking down at his notebook. He did not notice the anxious look on the passerby walking the opposite direction. The screen showed a close-up of the page on Kamui Woods, revealing a picture of Kamui on the left with his notes being shown on the right. The voice of Katsuki's friend echoed in his mind as he turned the page to lady showing his notes on her. Midoriya, I was not aware that you could draw that well, Momo said, looking surprised. You can draw, Midori? Mina asked, suddenly interested. Yeah, it's kind of a hobby just like quirk analysis. Izuku shrugged. If I didn't get into UA, I was thinking of joining an art school and see where it went from there. He did keep his dreams realistic if he didn't become a hero. Aizawa thought approvingly. Don't think less of your skills, Midobro. Ms. Midnight seems to approve of your drawings, Ajiro said. Izuku turns to the back where he sees Midnight clapping and gives him a big smile. Ochako stared at the picture of Empty Lady. So Deku thinks that Empty Lady is sexy? Denki chose the wrong moment to take the words out of her mind and put it into words. Wait, Midobro, do you think that Empty Lady is sexy? He asked curiously. Everyone looked at Izuku thinking the same thing. His eyes widened at the question and shook his head. I don't personally think Empty Lady is sexy. I think that she can use that to her advantage, like for popularity or to get things without having to do anything. She's not my type anyway. So what is your type? Mina asked. He turned red at the question. He looked at Ochako before quickly looking back at the screen as his on-screen self flipped the page to All Might's signature. I like a woman who is driven, motivated, has the same goals as me and will support me like how I would support her. The girls squealed at Izuku's answer and Ochako felt her face heat up. She knew that those actions screamed her name, but she never thought that Izuku would openly admit the kind of girls that he is into. Does Deku like me? Tako thought. All Might's words echoed in his mind as he closed the notebook. Izuku sighed as he looked at his notebook sadly. Even All Might said it. A hero needs a quirk. He sniffled as he thought, don't cry, damn it. Deep down you knew this all along. You just been avoiding reality. That's why you were trying so desperately to prove yourself wrong. Ochako looked at her best friend sadly. Deku, you can't be looking down on yourself like that. You're a good person. She squeezed his hand. I know you, Rarika. I just didn't expect All Might's words to hit me that hard. But I have a quirk now and I can save people. All Might looked sadly at his successor. Did his words really cause Izuku to lose his spark? There was a sound of an explosion nearby. Izuku turned towards it. That's strange. Is the fight from earlier still going on? Why am I here? Did I subconsciously walk this way to check it out? Izuku thought. Despite Izuku's on-screen expression, that got a few laughs from the students and the adults. Aizawa muttered something about problem children. Do you have a sixth sense for villain attacks, Midobro? Denki asked jokingly. Izuku shrugged, which caused more laughter. Aldra Izuku walked toward the crowd. He started looking through the crowd to see what the commotion was about. I shouldn't even stop. All my notes are useless. Aldra Izuku gasped in shock. It's the guy who attacked me. That can't be right. All Might captured him. The scene flashed back to All Might in his buff form posing with the bottles filled with the sludge villain. It transitions to All Might on the roof, showing empty pockets in his baggy cargo pants. But the bottle, if he dropped it? The scene transitions back to Aldra Izuku. That means it's my fault. Thanks for reminding me, Izuku said, putting his head in his hands. Ochako looked at Izuku before turning him towards her and putting his arms down. Izuku Midoriya, look at me, she said sternly as the on-screen crowd started talking among themselves. Izuku looked at her sadly but a little surprised that she used his whole name. Ochako put her hands on his shoulders. You need to stop blaming yourself for every small thing that happened. What happened in the past is gone and you can't change it. You need to move on from it. That boy in the middle school uniform and the future hero sitting next to me are not the same person anymore. Do you hear me? Izuku nodded meekly and she smiled at him. Now show me the smile of the hero that saves everyone, she whispered. He gave Ochako a bright smile that warmed her heart. The scene revealed All Might and Izuku's self-deprecating thoughts as Katsuki was being held by the sludge villain. I never thought I'd be saying this, but you guys can't be blaming yourselves like that. It's not very manly. Ijiro frowned. Yeah. I know that you guys can't change what has already happened. But look on the bright side, Bakugo is here with us. Rikido said, trying to relieve the tension in the room. Someone, a real hero will come soon. Izuku thought, praying that someone would arrive to save the day. Katsuki was still trying to free himself from the sludge villain. Izuku covered his mouth with his hands and Katsuki turns toward the crowd that All Might and Izuku are watching from and opens his eyes and the latter recognized who it was. Damn nerd. Katsuki said, loud enough for his friends to look in his direction. He points at the screen. Izuku's notebook dropped on the ground as he started running toward Katsuki and the sludge villain, surprising All Might and the pros. Izuku! Inko cried out from her seat. Deku! Ochako exclaimed. Midobro, that was you? That was so manly. Ijiro smiled. Midoriya, why are you always so constantly reckless? Tenya yelled at Izuku, intensely chopping the air. At the time, I didn't know that All Might was in the crowd. I was only thinking that it was my fault that the monster got out. Izuku exclaimed. You can't run towards danger just because you believe that something you did involuntarily is your fault and that your emotions got the best of you. Aizawa scolded Izuku. You're wrong. Katsuki's calm tone surprised Aizawa. What? Aizawa scowled at Katsuki. His emotions are what made him save a life. He used the skills he learned from analyzing heroes and that helped him. Katsuki said, not backing down. As Izuku keeps running, music started playing showing fear but determination in Izuku's eyes. No, you idiot. Stuff. You're gonna get yourself killed. Death Arms yelled out. Not this brat again, the sludge villain said, noticing Izuku. Deku? Aldra Katsuki thought as he saw Izuku running in his direction. What am I doing? Why am I running? Why can't I stop? Izuku thought as he was running. I never thought I would be saying this, but you got guts, Midoriya. Kyoka said and the others nodded. I wouldn't say it took guts to do that. It just felt right. Izuku said. But thanks, Jiro. You're toast, kid, the sludge monster yelled out. What do I do? What would a hero do right now? Izuku thought. He flashed back to his burnt notebook. Page 25, right? You actually remember what was written down in that notebook? Muscles? Mei asked, looking amazed. Sounds crazy, but yeah. I bet you guys think it's weird. Izuku said. No, it's not, Midori. You only say that because Bakugo said so. Mina said, shutting down his rebuttal. If it wasn't for those notes, Bakugo would not be sitting here today. Anta said. Shut up, flat face. I would have been fine. Katsuki grumbled. Sure. Everyone thought, rolling their eyes. Izuku takes off his backpack and throws it at the sludge monster. Take this, he yells out, the backpack hitting the monster in the face. The backpack hit the sludge villain in the eye, causing it to flinch back and allowing Katsuki to breathe. Nice throw, Midoriya. Rikido exclaimed. Magnifique. Yuga said. Kaken. Izuku yells out as he starts digging Katsuki out of the slime. What the hell? Why are you here? So the boy that you bullied for almost your entire childhood rushes to save you and that is your response? Mitsuki's mouth twitches, trying to hold back the scream that was about to erupt. Katsuki ignored his mom once more. Way to be grateful, Bakubro. Denki smirked. I don't know. My legs. They just started moving. Izuku admitted. Deku. Tako thought. Midori. Mina thought. Midobro. Ijiro thought sadly. This kid. Aizawa thought. My boy. All Might thought. I don't know why I did what I did. Izuku narrated as the thoughts that discouraged him or put him down were going through his mind. Maybe it was the look on his face. Kaken, I couldn't just stand there and watch you die. Aldra Izuku said with tears in his eyes and attempting a smile. Everyone gasped in realization as Izuku said that. All Might smiled at his on-screen successor. Come on, Deku. Ochako yelled out. You got this, Midori. Mina exclaimed. Go, Midoriya. Ijiro cheered. Everyone started cheering at that point. Izuku was surprised to see everyone cheering for him. The teachers and parents were also cheering for his heroic act. All Might gasped. "Get the hell off me!" Katsuki yelled. All Might's body started to expand as steam started coming off his body. "I have to do something no matter the cost. Just a little bit longer, kid. Then I'm done playing with you." The sludge villain yelled out, raising a slimy arm to lash out at Izuku. The pro heroes finally lunge forward. "Save the boy. This thing will kill him." Death Arms shouted. "Really? Now they want to do something?" Mina yells out in exasperation as everyone looks on in shock. The sludge lashed at Izuku. An explosion filled the screen. Izuku is on the ground untouched. "I really am pathetic," All Might's voice stated. Izuku looked up, shocked to see All Might holding back the sludge villain. His buff form was still steaming. "All Might!" The audience cheered. Again with the self-blame. Ijiro sighed at the scene. "No, young Kirishima. I was not self-pitying myself this time. Let's just say I was being a little hypocritical." All Might said. "I told you the traits that make a great champion, but I see that I wasn't living up to my own ideals." All Might pulls his arm out of the sludge villain's grip and grabs Izuku and Katsuku's arms. Pros are always risking their lives. That's the true test of a hero, All Might says as blood spews out of his mouth. "Damn you, All Might. Detroit smash." All Might punched the sludge villain with such force that it blasted apart. MT Lady shielded the crowd with her arms, and the pro heroes form a chain to shield a crowd on another side of the district. A twister formed from the air pressure of the punch. "Such power with one punch," Fumikage stated. All Might kneeled on the ground, breathing heavily as the pros and the onlookers silently watch. Izuku and Katsuki are shown laying on the ground unconscious. It started raining on screen. Death Arms looked at All Might in shock. "Holy crap, he changed the weather," Death Arms stated. Before All Might stood up, he wiped blood away from his chin. His music began to play. People in the crowd deduced that the rain was the result of All Might's punch and started to cheer. But when he tried to raise a fist in victory, he nearly stumbled backwards. He raised his fist in victory in a second attempt. While the majority of the audience cheered, most of them looked worriedly at the scene. All Might half-turned and smiled at an unconscious Izuku. After that, the hero gathered all the scattered mounds of sludge and the villain went into police custody where he belonged. Izuku narrated. The screen shows Backdraft, Kamui Woods, Death Arms and Ye Lady saluting the police while other officers put the garbage bags full of sludge into the police carrier. All Might was shown being interviewed by reporters while Izuku was shown on the floor, looking worried. "You moron," Izuku flinched. The camera zoomed out showing Death Arms and Kamui scolding Izuku. "Do you have a death wish?" Kamui Woods asked. "There was absolutely no reason for you to put yourself in danger like that." Death Arms scolded Izuku. "What?" The majority of the students yelled out. They didn't even try to save Bakugo. At least Deku did something to try and save him. Ochako glared at the screen. "If I knew that he said that to Midoriya, I would have not interned with him," Kyoka said with a disapproving look. "I got chewed out by the heroes big time while Kaken was praised for his bravery. They may not agree that you did anything to save Katsuki, but as his parents, thank you Izuku," Masaru and Mitsuki said. Izuku looked back and smiled at the two parents. "You're welcome." Bakugo, uncertified quirk usage called. "It wants to have a talk with you about using your explosions to fight back," Shoto said in his monotone voice. "What are you talking about, Icy Hot?" Katsuki glared at Shoto, his on-screen self doing the same to Izuku. "It's an inside thing, don't worry. Wouldn't you two agree, Ida and Midoriya?" Shoto looked towards the two. Izuku widened his eyes. "Hey, you're right. What the frick?" "Deku," Ochako gasped. She wasn't the only one. It was surprising to hear something like that come from Izuku's mouth. "Did Midoriya try to curse?" Kyoka asked. "Izuku," Mitsuki and Inko said in shock. "Language, Midoriya," Momo scolded him. "Midoriya, you're not allowed to curse." "Ribbit? So you said." "No, Todoroki is right." Tenya crossed his arms. The similarity between our situation and Bakugo are quite the same. It is hypocritical, at the least. What are you guys talking about? Ajiro asked. The hero? Tut-tut. No talking about outside things, please. Giselle interrupted. I wanted to apologize to All Might, but he was swarmed by interviewers and I didn't want to interrupt. Izuku thought as he walked home. You stuck around to do an interview despite the fact that you were already over your time limit? Aizawa asked with a raised eyebrow. Yagi sighed heavily. I tried to get away sooner, I really did, but you know how the media gets about these things? Well, Aizawa could hardly argue that. It was one of the many reasons he was an underground hero. I can always try to send a message to his website when I get home. Katsuki's voice was heard in the background. Kaken? Izuku turned around and saw Katsuki running behind him. Is Bakugo actually going to thank Midoriya for saving him? Itsuka asked. Doubt it. Denki said. Katsuki stopped breathlessly. Listen, I would never ask for a weakling like you to help me. Don't think you can look down on me. I got that. I was fine by myself. You're just a quirkless failure who won't even cut it as a rent-a-cop. You didn't help me. You did nothing, don't forget it. I don't owe you anything. I guess that's his way of saying thank you, Ajiro said. I'm gonna say this now because it needs to be said, Katsuki said, standing up. Alistair paused the show. Everyone, including Izuku, turned to look at him. You're not useless as I used to say you were. Thanks for saving me, nerd. But don't get all confident about that because you still won't look down on me. I'm going to be the #1 hero, Katsuki said with his signature grin. Everyone looked in shock as Izuku got up and smiled at Katsuki. I never looked down on you. I saved you because that is what a hero does. But I will beat you to surpass you as your rival. His face darkened to show his competitive side. Scary, the students thought. Let us continue. Alistair unpauses the show when Izuku and Katsuki sat down. Katsuki turned and stomped away from Izuku, who looked confused. What was that? Izuku thought. A small smile on his face as he watched Katsuki walk away before putting his head back down. Kaken is right though. It's not like I did anything to help today. But at least I tried. Deku. Now you're just lying to yourself. Ochako frowned at Izuku. If you hadn't thrown your backpack to distract the monster with your notebook hitting its eye, Bakugo wouldn't have been able to breathe. Yeah, Midoriya. Don't sell yourself short, Kyoka said with a smile. Thanks. I guess you're right, Izuku said, smiling. Guess now I should get back to giving up on my dreams. Ochako was about to contradict Izuku, but before she could say something, I am here, All Might said as he zoomed out from an alley as Izuku screamed out in surprise and the #1 hero's music started to play. All Might, where did you come from? Izuku looked back to see if Katsuki was still behind him. How did you get rid of all those reporters? All Might did his signature laugh as the background shows an American flag and saluted. I stand for justice, not sound bites. Because I am all me dash as he transformed back to his skeletal form and spat out blood. The students, when seeing All Might constantly spit out blood, they were torn between being worried or having a little bit of fun with All Might. Sir, are you sure you are okay? Tenya asked worriedly. The constant blood does not seem normal. Don't worry about it, young Ida. All Might reassured the class rep. The blood is a byproduct of the surgeries. I have it handled these days. All Might wiped the blood from his mouth. Young man, I came here to thank you and also to discuss your question from earlier. If you hadn't told me about your life, if you hadn't run into that fight, I would have been a worthless bystander watching from the crowd, so thanks. Oh no, it's my fault he was there to begin with. I got in the way of your hard work. I wasted your energy and not to mention your time, Izuku said, looking away from All Might. Midoriya, Tenya and Momo began to speak. Shoo. Izuku interrupted the two of them. They looked back at the screen. I'm not done. You told me you didn't have a power, so when I saw this timid, quirkless boy try to save a life, it inspired me to act too. Izuku looked up at the gaze of his hero. Emotional music began to play. There are stories about every hero, All Might said. How they became great. Most have one thing in common. Izuku flashed back to running through the crowd to save Katsuki from the sludge monster. Their bodies moved before they had a chance to think, almost on their own. Izuku gave a small gasp, taking in what All Might was saying. He started tearing up, realizing what was about to happen, and looked down. "Come on, All Might," Ejiro said. "You can do it," Mina said, quietly cheering the hero. "Say it." "For some reason, I remembered my mother's words in that moment," Izuku narrated. The music starts to intensify. "I'm sorry, Izuku. I wish things were different." Izuku's body slumped forward, trembling with pent-up emotions as he broke down in tears. "And today, that's what happened to you," All Might said in acknowledgement. Izuku clutched his chest as he closed his eyes, letting the tears fall down his face. "You never told me, back then, the thing I wanted you to say. The words I needed to hear." He fell to his knees. The students silently cheer All Might as they watch the emotional scene. Izuku fights back the tears as he goes through the emotional moment once more but fails to do so. Inko cries softly, wiping her tears, as the hero her son grew up watching praised him on the screen. Present Mike and Midnight took off their glasses to wipe the tears from their eyes. Aizawa and Nizu smiled at the on-screen #1 hero. All Might smiles as tears run down his face. The wind blew in All Might's hair with the sun setting behind him as he stood in the front of Izuku, who was racked with emotion. His weakened form made the words that were about to be said much more meaningful because they were coming from the true form who knew the dangers and risks of being a hero rather than the form that was a persona to the public. "Young man, you too can become a hero." Ochako hugged Izuku as they cried together. Everyone except a few stoic ones, including Katsuki, started crying and sniffling as they heard the hero in the world tell Izuku the words he had wished to hear all his life. Alistair and Giselle smiled warmly as they stood up and started clapping for Izuku. Pretty soon, everyone was clapping. "Midori is saying something," Mina said, pointing to the screen. Everyone stopped clapping and turned to look at the screen. Dreams can become reality. "Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that this is the story of how I became the world's greatest hero," narrator Izuku said. Katsuki's eye twitched when he heard that. Everyone else's mouths dropped when they heard that last line. They looked at Izuku, who looked just as shocked. They started clapping once more. Inko started to cry happily as All Might smiled proudly at his successor. "What?" Katsuki got up from his seat, looking livid. "How is you going to be the greatest? You damn nerd. You got your own show and already think you're gonna surpass me. Keep dreaming." Ejiro and Hanta had to hold Katsuki back. "I'm gonna be the world's greatest hero," Izuku said, wiping his tears. "Congratulations, Deku," Ochako exclaimed, hugging Izuku tightly. The ending starts to play. "There's something I don't understand," Momo states and turns to Izuku. "Midoriya, you have been in 2 stressful situations in the same day and yet your quirk has not manifested. When did superpower appear?" Izuku looked embarrassed for a moment. He scratched the back of his head. "Yeah. It's kind of a long story, but it should." "Izuku, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are on a schedule." Alistair interrupted the green-haired boy. "I'm sorry, sir." Izuku bowed to Alistair. All Might's music began to play. "Young man, I have deemed you worthy of inheriting the glorious power of All Might." "Wait, what do you mean, inherit?" "When you're ready, you'll take my unstoppable quirk, one for all." All Might boomed. "So it's that easy?" Izuku asked. "I can become a hero just like that?" All Might laughed. "Of course not, kid. Not with that frail body of yours." "Huh. Next time, roaring muscles. Midoriya is going to be super buff by the time I'm through with him. Go beyond. Plus ultra." The timer appears on top of the screen. Alistair and Giselle face-bombed, regretting not watching the previews. Everyone except All Might, Nizu, the Sinclairs looked at the screen in shock. Then they looked at Izuku, who was staring at the screen in shock. The students except Katsuki were asking Izuku rapid-fire questions. A shrill whistle interrupted the students as everyone covered their ears. Most of the audience glared at Present Mike, who was just as surprised with his ears covered. They saw Alistair stand up. "Apologies, but you have 10 minutes. I understand you have questions, so whether Izuku answers them or the show does." Izuku sighed deeply. I didn't think it would be revealed like this. But I guess even my own show can't keep a secret. He had a faraway look in his eyes. Well, congratulations, now you all know the truth. How is this possible? Itsuka asked in disbelief. Izuku shrugged. I don't want to talk about it. I'd rather let the show explain all this stuff, he said with a cold tone. He got up from his seat as everyone looked at him in shock at the sudden change of attitude and walked out of the theater. With that, everyone got up from their seats to stretch or talk to their friends. Aizawa glared at All Might, who got up to get water from the back. The timer was 1 minute until the start of episode 3. Everyone returned to their seats except Izuku, who was in the bathroom. Wait, where's Deku? Ochako asked. Everyone turned to the seat where she and Izuku were seated and noticed that a certain green-haired boy was missing. Me and Ojiro saw Midoburo in the bathroom looking in the mirror. Ojiro said, "We were calling his name, but I don't think he heard us." Yeah. He looked kind of angry. It was almost like he didn't recognize himself in the mirror. I have never seen him like that before. Mashireo admitted. All Might's eyes widened. Is it because of that preview of me revealing One for All? Should go check on young Midoriya? He was about to stand up from his seat. As the class rep, I shall go check on him, Tenya stated. He got up from his seat. Midoriya must be feeling a lot of pressure seeing his past, so I shall try to help him the best I can. Tenya walked out of the theater with a concerned look. Midoriya, stay strong. Izuku splashed water on his face after he wiped his tears. Damn it, Izuku. Why would you leave the theater like that? Now they're gonna wonder if something's wrong with you. Maybe you should just stay here for the whole episode? Izuku glared into the mirror. What am I doing? I'm the next symbol of peace. The world's next greatest hero. I should be happy seeing All Might tell me those words again. Mr. Sinclair was right when he said that secrets were going to be revealed. But I was not expecting One for All to be revealed like that. Now I just feel regret. Izuku chuckled softly. Regret? That's a strong word. He didn't feel regret when he saved someone in need. He was willing to give up everything when he saved Ochako and Shoto. He was willing to give up his life for Katsuki, Koda, Eri, and All Might, just like the said hero wanted to give up his life to make him a better hero. He was willing to save Tenya from making a mistake that would end his dream as a hero. He looked at his right malformed hand and clenched a fist. One punch. That's what started his dream to be a hero in UA, saving Ochako. One punch. He saved Koda from getting killed by that monster of a villain. One punch. He saved Eri from that bastard. Kaken, Ochako, All Might, Todoroki, Ida, Koda and Eri. 5 of the people he saved ended up saving him as well. Even with all the pain he caused himself with this power, it was his ability to save people that made him a hero. Izuku grit his teeth. All he knew was pain. 11 years of pain getting bullied by his childhood friend because of his kindness and not having a quirk. The pain of being rejected by society and his classmates throughout the years for being quirkless. Now 15+ months of pain perfecting One for All, he broke his arms to the point where they could end up as ticking time bombs. How much more pain would he have to endure in his life? Are you okay, Midoriya? Tenya's voice interrupted Izuku's thoughts. Izuku turned to see Tenya, who had his hand on his shoulder. He unclenched his fist and put it down. Ida. Yamoke. I was just getting my thoughts straight. You do realize you've been in here for 15 minutes? Tenya questioned, taking his hand off Izuku's shoulder. What? It's been 15 minutes? Izuku asked in shock. We were 1 minute from starting the show when Uraraka saw that you were not in your seat. Ojiro and Kirishima were here and saw you looking into the mirror earlier. They tried to get your attention with no success, saying you looked angry. Now I find you here clenching your hand. Midoriya, what is going on? Don't lie to me, Tenya said sternly. There's nothing you can do even if I tell you. I'm not just the class rep, Midoriya. I am your best friend, Tenya said calmly. What do you want me to say, Ida? Izuku asked, his body shaking with anger and frustration. Am I supposed to be happy after seeing my past? Tenya crossed his arms. I know this is about part of your past. You're upset about us seeing you get your quirk from All Might. You're afraid that you're going to get hurt once more because we're going to find out the truth of your quirk since you were not born with it? Izuku looked at Tenya with wide eyes. His body stopped shaking and he nodded. Tenya sighed. Midoriya, we're your friends and we now know how much you've been through. Do you think that knowing the truth about your quirk will change anything? I'm still debating that. Izuku grumbled. Midoriya, your power is not just your quirk but the many skills that you acquire. In fact, one of them is your resilience to save people. You saved Bakugo from that sludge villain, Uraraka from the zero-pointer and me from the hero killer without hesitation. You're a hero before you got into UA and All Might did the right thing choosing you. If not for you and Todoroki, I would not have taken my brother's hero name. Really? Izuku asked. Tenya nodded. Yes. Now let's go. Izuku sighed. Fine. Thanks, Ida. You're welcome. The two boys left the bathroom and headed toward the theater. But remember, tardiness isn't good. You'll never change, Ida. Izuku said with a smile. They walked into the theater. Once they walked into the theater, all eyes were on them. All Might gave Izuku a worried look. I know what you all are thinking but I am sure Midoriya will answer your questions later. Let us watch the show for now. Tenya said, chopping the air intensely. The two of them went to their seats. Izuku avoided the looks in his direction as he sat down. Ochako put a hand on his shoulder. She didn't say anything but he could see the worry in her eyes. Izuku gave her a small smile and nodded. She smiled back and turned toward the screen. Alistair pressed play on the remote. The episode started with a bright light illuminating All Might's form. The world's most popular hero, All Might. Age, unknown. Quirk, unidentified. He broke onto the hero scene and was an immediate hit thanks to his abilities. Narrator Izuku began his narration as the screen showed the many merchandise that represented his popularity. Midnight giggled. Really, All Might? Not letting anyone know your age? All Might coughed. I guess we never really knew All Might like we thought we did. Ajiro said. Yeah. Hearing this from ultimate fanboy Midori, we took All Might for granted. Mina stated, which got a few chuckles. Ultimate fanboy Midori? Izuku asked, his face turning beet red. A bar graph appeared, showing a decrease of crime. Ever since he appeared, crime rates have drastically decreased. His very existence, a deterrent for many would-be villains. The world is a safer place. I see. I never thought the effect of All Might's presence would cause crime to decrease that much. We must do everything in our power to be like All Might, Tenya said with his fist clenched. You're pumped up with intensity, Ida? Itsuka said. Our class rep saw a graph. It has that effect on him, Denki said jokingly. The students laughed as Tenya blushed in embarrassment. The scene changed to people looking up at a statue of All Might. They don't just call him the symbol of peace. It's what he is. Narrator Izuku praised All Might as a flock of doves flew past the statue. And this pillar of justice said to me, imagine a few years from now and Midoriya has his own statue, Toru said. Not happening. I'm taking the #1 spot. Katsuki said. Keep dreaming, Bakugo. Deku has more drive to be a hero than you. Ochako said. Thanks, Uraraka. Izuku said. Plus nobody wants to see that ugly smirk of yours on a statue. Kyoka said. Katsuki had a vein bulging out of his forehead. The majority of the audience tried to hold back their laughter but failed. The scene transitioned to All Might in his true form standing over a kneeling, sobbing Izuku in an artistic depiction. Young man, you too can become a hero. Ochako squeezed Izuku's hand as his on-screen self wept while all the negative comments replayed in his mind. I needed someone to tell me that, narrator Izuku said. And then, the person that I admired most in this world did. Honestly, part of me never thought I'd hear those words. Much less from him. Here it comes. Izuku. The All Might held out his arms and announced, I deem you worthy of my power. My quirk is yours to inherit. Aldra Izuku stopped crying. He looked up at All Might in confusion. The opening plays. What does that mean? Did All Might just say you'll inherit his quirk? Momo asked, looking at Izuku. Izuku sighed. Yes, Yaoyorozu. All Might said I'll inherit his quirk. But how, Midori? Mina asked. It's complicated. This is why I said I'll let the show explain. How is it possible? I understand a name or title being passed down. But a quirk that can be passed down, it seems impossible, Ajiro said. You can't just be given a quirk. Nito said. Now that I know the truth of Midoriya's quirk, I can use it against him and prove why Class B is far more superior than Class A, Nito smirked. It may sound impossible, but it kind of makes sense since Midoriya has a quirk after seeing his past. Tetsu said. Izuku looked up in surprise and confusion. His face was a mess from crying. Wait, what do you mean inherit? Inherit what? I have a sudden urge to hand that Midoriya a tissue, Itsuka said. Most of the students and adults laughed while Izuku covered his face in embarrassment. All Might threw his head back and laughed. You should see your face right now. Don't worry, I'm not gonna force this thing on you. All Might walked up to Aldra Izuku. When you say you won't force it on him, you're not trying to say that your quirk can be passed on like that, right? Shoto asked. Izuku and All Might didn't say anything, which worried everyone else in the theater except the Sinclairs and Nizu. All Might lifted his index finger pointed to the sky. Listen well, young man. This is your choice. Do you want to accept my awesome power or not? All Might asked as blood spewed out of his mouth. The majority of the audience winced. All Might sighed. If all of them react like this to seeing him spew out blood after 2 episodes, how well are they going to react to what's coming next? Izuku looked at All Might in confusion. What is he talking about? What is this? The middle schooler thought as All Might wiped the blood from his mouth. Yes, All Might, what are you talking about? Aizawa asked the retired hero. All Might drank from his cup of water, avoiding eye contact with the underground hero. There are a couple things you should know about my abilities. The scene changed to a black and white newspaper with a picture of All Might in his Silver Age costume. Journalists always guess my quirk as super strength or some kind of invulnerability. When people ask in interviews, I always make a joke and dodge the question. All Might does that quite a lot, Momo said as she took notes in her notebook. That's because the world needs to believe that their symbol of peace is a natural-born hero like any of them. But I'm not. There's nothing natural about my ability, All Might said as Izuku stared at him in disbelief. He held out his arms to his sides in dramatic flair. I wasn't born with this power. It's a sacred torch that was passed on to me from someone else. All Might wasn't born with his quirk. That's unreal, Denki exclaimed. Someone gave you this quirk? No way, Izuku said in shock. Yes way. And you're next. I can give you my abilities. What? The majority of the students yell out in unison. So I was right. Your quirk is not just like All Might's. It was his quirk. So you said. You almost give your life to save Bakubro and All Might rewards you with his quirk? What the hell, man? Ajiro asked in shock. This is completely new to me, Momo said, shaking her head in disbelief. All Might, the #1 hero, had a quirk that can be given from person to person. That's why he's in this form all the time now after Kamino. He has no power left in him because he gave you his quirk, Midoriya. Izuku gave Momo a small smile. You're right on the dot as usual, Yarozu. Wait, hold on. This is a lot to process, Izuku said as he sat up slightly on his knees. You know, kidding. I'm surprised you didn't go insane hearing all that from All Might, Kyoka said. Izuku chuckled. You'll see. The scene changed to a phone being scrolled down in an online community page. The topic was Summary of What's Known About All Might's Quirk. It's true there's a lot of debate as to what your quirk actually is. Nobody's ever figured it out. It's the world's greatest mystery. People are constantly talking about it online. Izuku stated. That's true. People have no idea what to consider as All Might's quirk to this day. Setsuna said. But, well, the idea of passing on a quirk or inheriting it just doesn't make any sense to me. I've never heard anything like that before. Powers are supposed to be unique to each individual. I mean, since the first superpowers, nobody's ever been able to just give someone else their power like a present. That's crazy. If this is true, it causes us to rethink. Izuku started to mumble. There's the Midoriya muttering again. Itsuka said in wonder. What on earth goes on in that head of yours, Deku? Ochako giggled as she poked Izuku on the forehead. Inko had to stifle her laugh seeing her son mutter his heart out. It's like he's taking the words that he's thinking and putting them into actual words. It's surprising that we can understand most of what he's saying. Mashireo said. His mind truly is a wonder. Fumikage says quietly, making Tsuyu giggle. Sounds like you're overthinking this whole inheriting thing. Kanji started surrounding All Might and Izuku. Stop nerding out. All Might blurted out, getting Izuku's attention. Yamidori, stop nerding out. Mina said, making Izuku jump. All Might did a dramatic showing with his hands. You'll have to adjust your reality and accept this new truth. I can transfer my quirk to someone else, and that's one facet of my secret abilities. The screen got a close-up of his face and extended hand, light seeming to form in it as his hair and shirt became illuminated and were billowed by it. The true name of my power is superpower, Ashido declared. One for all, one for all, Izuku repeated. One for all. The students and the adults echoed. It's half of the motto of the Three Musketeers. Midnight said. Interesting. Yes. All Might spoke, the camera zooming into the black scara of his eyes. Dramatic music began to play as a star of white light streaked forward, striking a star of blue light. One person improves the power, then hands it off to another person. It continues to grow as it's passed along. All Might's words facilitated this depiction of his quirk, growing with every new holder as the streak of light impacted a red star, then green, orange, purple, and magenta, before surging forward and finally connecting with a bright yellow light with a great flash. It is this cultivated power that allows me to save those who are in need of a hero. The truth behind my strength. Hold on, how many lights was that? Mina asked. Momo looked at her notebook before answering. If I'm correct, the colored light depicts the holder of One for All. All Might was the yellow light at the end, which means that he is the 8th holder of One for All. That makes Midoriya the 9th holder. Good eye, Yaoyorozu. You're right. I'm the 9th holder of One for All, Izuku said with a nod. So what I'm getting from this is that One for All is basically a stockpile quirk that is transferable, which means that it got stronger than it was originally due to the many times it was passed down. Mei said. Correct, young handsome. All Might said. A stockpiling quirk. That's useless to me, Nito thought in frustration. But if you had this power, why would you keep it a secret from us, problem child? Aizawa asked with a scowl. Alistair paused the show. Isn't it obvious, Mr. Aizawa? You saw what my life was like back then? Izuku said with his head down. I thought none of you would accept me if you knew the truth about me. Midoriya, did we seem so shallow to you? Momo asked softly. I didn't want to take the chance, Yaoyorozu. Izuku said sadly. Imagine the greatest hero in all of Japan giving a quirkless boy his quirk. It seems like a good laugh. There were a few minutes of silence. Deku. Ochako's soft voice broke the silence. Even if you told us about this power, it would not change anything. You mean a lot to us and we will always be there for you. Yemidobro. You're an inspiration to our class. Now you're a bigger inspiration, Denki said. Class A nodded in agreement and gave him words of encouragement. Izuku smiled. Thanks. You guys are taking this better than I expected. Oh no, we're still in shock. Hanta admitted. We just want you to know that you're not alone in this. But we should be careful about this, Tenya said, standing up and chopping his hand down. I can understand why we were all kept in the dark about it. Since we now know that Midoriya could transfer his power to another, we must be careful with this information. That means? Mina asked worriedly. If word that All Might's quirk can be passed on gets out, Midoriya would be targeted by All Might's enemies. They may also target anyone close to him. Momo stated. You guys. I don't want to see you hurt because of me. Izuku said sadly. I don't want to be a burden to you all. Deku, don't say that. You're not a burden to us, Ochako said. Yemidobro. We're with you to the end. If you think you're doing this alone, you're wrong, Tajiro said. All Might cleared his throat. He didn't dare to speak because of the angry homeroom teacher. But he needed to reassure his successor because of his self-doubt. Young Midoriya, Your friends are right. You are not alone in this. Thank you, All Might. Izuku smiled at his mentor. I believe we can continue now, darling. Giselle said. Very well. Alistair unpaused the show. But why would you choose to give me a gift like that? What if I can't live up to it? Aldra Izuku asked. Come on, Death. Is that even a question? Ochako asked rhetorically. I was on a long hunt for a worthy successor. And then, I watched you jump into action as the rest of us watched idly by. You may just be a quirkless fanboy, but you tried to save that kid. You acted like a hero. All Might praised the boy. You see, Midobro, All Might gets it. Even without a quirk, you didn't hesitate to save Bakubro. That was manly of you. Ijiro said with a toothy grin. Damn straight. Tetsu said. You showed guts there, man. Izuku realized that All Might praised him. He blinked and his eyes were glistening as tears threatened to fall from them. Seriously. You got to stop crying so much if you want my quirk. Come on, kid. Inko laughed. Sorry, Mr. All Might, but he's a Midoriya. It's not happening anytime soon. Mom. You're embarrassing me. Izuku covered his face as laughter was heard around the theater. It's my job as your mother to embarrass you, Izuku. Inko said with a smile. Izuku clenched his pants. He said so much to encourage me. He even told me the secret behind his powers. He rubbed his eyes with his sleeve. Is this what I've been waiting for all these years? How can I turn him down? Izuku stood up and gave All Might a determined look. But I'll do it. Yes. All Might grinned. No reluctance. That's exactly how I figured you'd respond. Wait a minute. Ochako turned to Alistair, who paused the show. Mr. Sinclair, you knew about this part? Well, of course we knew about this part. We watched the show many times. Izuku's story is inspiring. He went from being a quirkless boy on his path to being the greatest hero. Alistair said, smiling at the brown-haired girl. Wait, Ochako, what do you mean he knew All Might said that? Mina asked the brunette, cocking her head to the left. When Mr. Sinclair came to my room with the intention of showing us this, he said to me and Deku once we agreed that Heech was right about Deku having no reluctance and that Heech turned out to be All Might. Ochako said, internally cursing herself for mentioning Izuku in her room. Everyone's eyebrows perked up when she mentioned Izuku being in her room. Minoru's face scrunched in jealousy. Midoriya, Izuku turned to look at the class rep, who looked baffled. What were you doing in Uraraka's room? Izuku sighed. Uraraka was not feeling well, so she called me and I immediately went to her room. But she could have called Azui or... I told you to call me Tsu. Tsuyu corrected Tenya. My mistake. She could have called Tsu or another girl to help her. Why did she call you instead of them? Ida. Please don't start this now, Ochako pleaded with Tenya. I don't want to talk about it. Minoru made this the perfect moment to start a fight with Izuku. He was going to regret it when Izuku got angry, but he didn't care. Midoriya's lying, class rep. He's totally been boning Uraraka under our noses this whole time. Minoru exclaimed. Everyone except Ochako turned to Izuku. The brunette was trying to fight the tears, but her body was trembling. The show kept her distracted from her recent nightmare, but to be accused of having sex in the dorms by the class pervert? No words could describe what she was feeling. Ochako and Midori would never do that. They're too pure. Mina thought. Ochako was trying to hide it, but Izuku knew that the nightmare was still fresh in her mind. He turned to glare at Minoru. Mineta, that's enough. You don't know what you're talking about. Keep this up and you'll regret it. Izuku gave Minoru a look of disdain. Minoru was on a roll now. Don't lie, Midoriya. Minoru said with a smirk. You act like you're all pure and innocent, but deep down, you're just like me. First, you boned that hottie from Shiketsu and now one of the hottest girls in our class. Mineta, I said that's enough. Izuku stood up. Everyone could feel this aura of rage coming off Izuku. They could see that sparks were emanating from his body like he activated his quirk even though the majority of their quirks were not working. Everyone in the back 2 rows could see his eyes glowing with anger. Izuku felt the blood rushing to his head. Scary, everyone thought. Let's get a few things straight, you damn filth. First, I'm nothing even close to you. Second, If you think I'm going to do something like being with another girl to hurt the girl I love, you are dead wrong. Third, Ochako is a strong, beautiful girl and as pure as can be. Don't you dare tarnish that or I will destroy you. Apologize to Ochako right now. Izuku growled. But Midoriya? 3. Just admit it. 2. I'm sorry, Uraraka. I shouldn't have said that. Please don't hurt me, Midoriya. Minoru pleaded. Izuku's aura of rage disappeared and the sparks stopped emanating. He sat down and took a deep breath. He turned to look at his best friend/crush. Are you okay, Ochako? The persona completely shifted from scary to kind and caring, his eyes showing concern for her. Ochako's heart melted as she looked at Izuku with adoration and tears in her eyes. He stood up for her from the class pervert. But more importantly, he loves me, Ochako said in her head. She tackled her hero into a hug, burying her face against his chest. Izuku blushed deeply but he smiled and held Ochako. He picked the blanket off the floor, brushed it off and put it around the two of them. Everyone else looked shocked at the sudden eruption. They also noticed that Izuku didn't even realize that he confessed his love to Ochako. Momo felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. She took it out and saw a message from Mina in a group chat with the Class A girls except Ochako. Alien Queen, meeting outside the theater after the episode ends ASAP. I already told Hatsum. Yamamo, bring Kendo. Momo read the message and smiled. She typed her message and pressed send. Kriati, I have a feeling I know what this is about. She messaged Itsuka and pressed send. Kriati, meeting outside after the episode ends. Her phone vibrated. Battle Fist. Okay. Aizawa and All Might knew why Izuku was in Ochako's room, but that was a conversation for later. Mineta, you pull something like that again, I won't hesitate to have you expelled. Do I make myself clear? Aizawa scowled at Minoru, who nodded. I think we can continue with the show, Mr. Sinclair. Niza said. You're positive that other than the people we gave privileges to, quirks don't work here, right? Giselle whispered to Alistair in English. I activated one for all temporarily so that Izuku could teach Minoru a proper lesson in respecting women. Alistair whispered back. It definitely worked, darling. Good job. Thank you, love. Alistair pressed play. But it wasn't that simple. Receiving All Might's power turned out to be no easy task, as I'd soon find out. Episode 3, Roaring Muscles. Are we going to get a training montage? Ajiro asked. He clenched his fist in anticipation. This is going to be intense. Heck yeah, man. Tetsu clenched his fist as well. The scene changed to a large rock with the words, Dagoba Municipal Beach parked on it. A caption appeared with the words, 2 days later, early morning. Izuku was heard grunting. The scene transitioned to Izuku in a white t-shirt and track pants, trying to pull a fridge with All Might sitting on top of it. That's not the beach, Mina said. It looks nothing like that. It used to be a mess a few years back. It's a good thing the city finally cleaned it, Toru said. The area around them was surrounded by piles of junk. Hey. It's pretty comfy on this fridge. How are you doing down there? All Might called down to Izuku, sounding far too amused. The boy slumped forward in the sand in defeat. Aijiro and Tetsu put down their fists. Midobro, my expectations for this training montage are low right now. What were you thinking? Ajiro asked. Let's just say I was a little too eager. Izuku scratched the back of his head. People move these every day, you know, and most of them don't even have any super strength. Aizawa turned to give All Might a deadpan stare and had his hands on his capture scarf. I take it this is your idea of training? He said it a little louder than expected. Everyone turned to look at All Might except Izuku, who was covering his face in embarrassment. All Might held out his hands in surrender. That was all young Midoriya. He wanted to start big. But look at him. So I sat on it to, encourage him to go back to something more his speed. He's got a point, Midoriya. You were a twig back then? Rikido said, fighting back laughter. Well, yeah, but there's an extra 600 pounds with you sitting on top of it. That didn't change a thing. Izuku grumbled. Ochako giggled as she watched her hero complain about the 40-pound difference on screen. The camera zoomed out to reveal how much trash surrounded them. Why do you have me dragging trash anyway? All Might laughed and took out a red smartphone. Take a look at yourself. The number 1 hero took pictures of him. You're not ready for my power. Izuku turned to look at All Might, tears in his eyes. But I thought you said I was worthy? He put his head down while on his hands and knees, wailing in betrayal. Laughter was heard around the theater. Damn muscles, you were high-strung. Mei teased. It's not every day your favorite hero tells you that he would give you his power and then want to train you. Izuku said with a weak chuckle. I'm talking about your weak body. All Might said he kept taking pictures of Izuku. They're not compatible. Yuga said. Aoyama. Tenya exclaimed. He stopped wailing and turned to look at All Might. My quirk one for all is a whole lot to handle. The combined physical abilities of everyone who used it creates a hurricane of pure force. An unprepared body can't fully inherit it. Everyone in the theater winced as they watched a disturbing visual of Izuku's head, arms and legs exploding from his body. The word kaboom was stylized around his body. Your arms and legs would shoot off if you tried to? My arms and legs would explode if I even could copy this power? Nito gulped. Voila. Not compatible. Yuga stated. Midoriya. Aizawa shook his head. Now he knows why the problem child was always breaking his bones. His body couldn't handle the power it was given. So All Might was training you to be a proper vessel for one for all. Momo stated. Izuku nodded. Yeah. But you still broke your bones? Denki said. Picture one for all as a light switch. It was either keep it off, where I do it quirkless, or turn it on, where I use it at full power. There was no knob where I could change the power until the internships. Izuku said. Aizawa glared at All Might, making him flinch and hide behind Midnight, who giggled. Young Midoriya is going to be the death of me, All Might thought. But you broke your arms again during the training camp, Midori? Mina said. Izuku tensed up. I can't talk about that now, Ashido. I know you have questions on what happened, but can we wait when we get to that point? Mina sighed. Fine. Seriously? Izuku shook his head to get the visual out. But so this whole trash thing is really some kind of hardcore gym workout and you're my trainer? All Might gave Izuku a thumbs up. You got it. But there's another reason too. What's the other reason? Denki said. It's right in front of you, you idiot. Kyoka said. Shut up and watch. I did a little online research yesterday. It turns out this part of the beach used to be beautiful. He walks toward the fridge. He gives it a light tap with his knuckle, causing it to cave in a little. But it's been a total mess for the last few years. Mei yelped in surprise. He just tapped it and it broke. How powerful are you guys? Izuku and All Might chuckled. Because of the ocean currents, anything that's dropped in the water ends up here. People take advantage of that when they're illegally dumping their trash. Now all the locals avoid this place. How disgraceful! Tenya exclaimed. Do people not know that it's bad to litter and that they should throw out their trash in their designated disposal bins? But it's still a mess during All Might and Midoriya's training. Setsuna said. She gasped in realization. No way. Heroes these days are all about showing off and capturing flashy villains. All Might said, putting his hand on top of the fridge. That's your future in a nutshell, Bakugo. Kyoka sarcastically snarked. Shut it ears. Katsuki yelled out. Things were different before quirks. Service is what matters. All Might pressed down on the fridge, crunching it down. Back then, heroes were those who helped. The community, even if it was kind of boring. Aizawa's eyebrows perked up. The number 1 hero, the flashiest hero in Japan, All Might was teaching his successor the values of community service. The man didn't simply give Midoriya his quirk and run with it. He had a plan set for how he was going to do all this. Maybe he had All Might figured out all wrong. The man wasn't as shallow and self-centered as Aizawa thought he was. All Might crunched the fridge into a compressed state. The air pressure caused the garbage behind All Might to blow away. You will restore the coastline for this entire section of the beach. That is the first step on your path, young man, towards being a hero. So it wasn't the city that cleaned the beach? Mina exclaimed. We have Midori to thank for the beach being cleaned up. That's so cool, Deku. Ochako praised Izuku. Izuku, Inko said in shock. Izuku turned to look at his mom. Why, you were cleaning the beach when you started dieting all of a sudden? Inko asked. Yeah. Izuku said as confidently as he could. The camera zoomed out to show the giant pile of garbage behind Izuku. He looked around at the trash. All this? But there's so much. Midoriya exclaimed. The camera zoomed back even more, showing even more huge piles of trash devastating the beach. That's impossible. That's crazy, Midobro. Ijiro exclaimed. You cleaned the entire beach by yourself? Just how plus ultra did you go? Denki exclaimed in disbelief. More than you probably did, jamming it. Kyoka smirked at her couchmate. All Might stood up with his hand on his hip. Young Midoriya, you want to go to UA, right? Izuku turned to All Might. Well, yeah, of course. You went there, so it must be the best school around, right? Izuku clenched his fist. It's a long shot. But still, I'm gonna shoot for the moon. You got a lot of spirit, fanboy. But as I mentioned before, Hero Ing isn't easy to do without a quirk. It's not fair, but that's the reality, and UA is the hardest hero course to get into. It's a hero's job to combat that unfairness. If I wanted to get into UA, I had to go beyond, plus ultra style. Izuku clenched his fist. He turned to Aizawa. Isn't that right, Mr. Aizawa? Aizawa nodded at the problem child. Despite his hardships, Izuku never gave up. He fought tooth and nail to get into UA. The first day he met the boy, Aizawa was ready to expel him because of the lack of control of his quirk. But Izuku showed him that he has the heart to improve. He has the drive to be the best hero he can be, no doubt about it. He saw that when Izuku saved Eri from Chisaki. So that means that I have to prepare my body for your quirk really fast. UA's exam is in 10 months. Izuku said, walking over to All Might. Dang, Midoriya. You had 10 months to prepare your body for All Might's quirk? That's hardcore, man. Tetsu said. Not to worry, Kit. All Might said as he held a pack of papers in his hand. I got you covered with the help of my aim to pass, American Dream Plan. Follow this to the letter and the beach will be cleaned just in time. I also detailed every other aspect of your life while I was at it. Your training started at 4 in the morning? Denki asked as the on-screen Izuku went through the plan. That is one thorough schedule. Did you manage to stay on track, Midoriya? Tenya asked, looking at Izuku. For the most part, yeah. Izuku admitted. If I'm being honest, this is going to be super hard. All Might whispered to Izuku. Think you're up to it? Why is All Might whispering to Midoriya if they're the only ones there? Minoru asked. It's for dramatic effect? Yuga said, a twinkle in his eyes. Sure I am. I have to work harder than anyone else to get in. So what choice do I have, right? All Might nodded in approval. Just like that, I began 10 months of absolute hell. Alright, the real training montage begins. Ijiro said, his fist clenched in anticipation. The training montage of Midoriya's 10 months of absolute hell began, set to a funky musical score that kicked off with a drum beat that had most of the students pumped up. The other students watched as the scene changed to Izuku pulling a storage locker while All Might shouted words of motivation. I'm using different muscle groups depending on the size and shape of the trash I'm hauling. Izuku thought as he ran with a tire in his arm. That's actually an effective way to train, Itsuka said. All the trash would have different sizes and mass, so it would be a great full-body workout. Let's go. Let's go. The clock is ticking and 10 months will be over before you know it. All Might shouted. Izuku fell on the ground but he got up and kept running. Don't you give up. It's time to go beyond. It must have been cool to have All Might as your personal trainer, huh, Midoriya? Koji asked. Izuku nodded. So cool, he said. The scene transitions to Aldra Middle School. So you see, with the appearance of quirks, the building standard act in place had to be. Izuku's teacher said. So tired but I gotta focus. Aldra Izuku thought as he looked exhausted in class. The scene showed a blank page with the above caption, Proposed Independent Training Menu. Aizawa rolled his eyes. Of course the problem child would make a secret routine behind his mentor's back. He turned to All Might. I'm guessing you were not aware that he pulled something like this? All Might nodded. He managed to keep it hidden from me but not until his body gave out one day that I noticed. You managed to get him back on track, right? Present Mike asked worriedly. Of course. What kind of mentor would I be? All Might asked jokingly. The incompetent kind. Aizawa grumbled. Present Mike and Midnight laughed. Shota. Midnight said, shaking her head. It'd be better if I could finish cleanup a week before the exam. That means I have only got 294 days left. If I take recovery periods into account, assuming I'll be resting 2 days between each hard workout then, that's not going to end well, Ajiro said. But isn't our school motto about pushing yourself? Mina asked, looking at Ajiro. Ajiro shook his head. Pushing yourself is one thing. But Midobro is going over his limit if he doesn't follow the plan the right way. That gives me about 98 days of actual training even at my most efficient. I can get in around 5 hours every morning and night. So that's 490 hours. Also, I'll need to make sure I'm hitting every muscle group, which means I need to pay attention to the type of work I'm doing on the beach every day. I could start sneaking in extra workouts and lifting weights in my home, I suppose. Yeah, that would help me focus my workouts and isolate specific muscles. It would cost me time. Lots of time. I'll need to cut back on the hours of sleep All Might scheduled for me. But independent training could help me catch up a little bit more. Excellent. Izuku began to mutter as everyone in the class turned to look at him except Katsuki. The audience in the theater was dying of laughter as they were listening to Izuku's muttering. Most of them were holding their sides as they were laughing while others were trying to wipe the tears from their eyes. The only ones not laughing were Aizawa, All Might, Izuku, Fumikage, Yui, Reiko and Shoto. Aizawa was ready to strangle Izuku with his scarf. All Might was shaking his head profusely. Izuku was covering his face in embarrassment. Fumikage did not laugh, but he had a small smile on his face. Shoto. Reiko and Yui were not laughing, but they were internally amused by the Grionette's muttering. The teacher put the book down and used his quirk to extend his hand to hit Izuku on the head. Hey Midoriya. Izuku covered his mouth, realizing he was muttering. The on-screen gesture made the laughing audience members snap back to reality as most of them leveled their glares at the screen. Aizawa growled at the screen and wanted to strangle the teacher for hitting one of his best students. That was highly unprofessional. There were other ways to get Midoriya's attention, Tenya said, narrowing his eyes. Even more reason to have that school shut down. Nizu glared at the screen. Your middle school sucked, Midoriya? Kyoka said with a scowl. Yeah, it really did. Izuku admitted. Ochako gave Izuku a sad look. I know you had a run-in with a villain, but pull yourself together, kid. If you really want to get into UA, you might actually have to know something, the teacher said as the Aldra students laughed at Izuku's humiliation. Oh right, I've got to study too? Izuku thought. You hear him? Us. Idiot. It must suck to be them because Midobro got into UA in the end. I bet they're probably eating their words now. Denki said. Aldra Katsuki was looking away from Izuku while the two were talking to each other. Looks like Bakugo is actually ignoring Midori for once in his life. Mina smirked. Katsuki glared at Mina, who giggled. The scene changed to Izuku with All Might at the beach. Running. Pushing a tire. All Might telling Izuku to put his back into pushing the tire. Izuku showed his mom the menu in the training plan. You were actually okay with Izuku's meal plan, Inko? Mitsuki asked. I was surprised when he first showed it to me. But he told me that he wanted to get into UA, so I gave him my full support. Inko said. The scene showed Izuku eating the food that Inko cooked for him. That's a lot of food, Midoriya. Tenya said. With the intense training I was doing, I barely paid attention to how much I was eating. Plus, I think my mom was a little surprised most of the time that I finished all of it in one go. Izuku said with a smile. The scene changed to Izuku studying at home. Then pushing a locker at the beach. Doing push-ups in his house. He was in class the next day trying not to fall asleep. You look tired, man. Tetsu said. Izuku nodded. Yeah. Were you getting enough sleep? Itsuka asked. Most of the time. Izuku admitted. Izuku gobbled his food down while his mom blinked at him in surprise. He asked for another serving of food. You were right about Midoriya being surprised how much you were eating, Toru said. Izuku was running outside at night. He was so exhausted that he would end up throwing up or All Might looking like he was done with the whole thing. Inko looked a little concerned as she watched her son throw up. How much was he pushing himself just to get into UA? The scene changed to Izuku swimming while All Might was watching him. 4 fangirls came over seeing All Might and he posed for them. That got chuckles from the students while Minoru was imagining himself in that moment with the girls. Aizawa gave All Might a deadpan stare. Really, All Might? All Might chuckled. I had to make sure people didn't know that I was training young Midoriya. Aizawa shook his head. This is another of the many reasons he chose to be an underground hero. Izuku was lifting weights at home. He was lifting garbage into All Might's truck. He was working out in class. The nerd was working out this in class. Maybe I should have done the same. Katsuki glared at the screen. The sun was setting and Izuku was shown, giving All Might a piggyback ride. I'm jealous. Now I want a Midori piggyback ride. Mina pouted. Get in line, Mina. I want to be the first one to get a piggyback ride from Deku. Ochako argued. If anyone's getting a piggyback ride from Greenie, it's gonna be me. Setsuna said. Greenie? Izuku thought. Pretty soon, all the girls in the theater wanted a piggyback and Izuku promised he would give them piggyback rides while his on-screen self was carrying a heavy container running alongside All Might on a Segway. Izuku's vision started to blur in multiple colors and the sound of him falling was heard. All Might stops the Segway. This is what I meant, Ajiro said. I see. Mina said. Hey kid. Look alive now. You've only got 3 months left. What, are you gonna give up after all this work? Wanna flush it all down in the toilet and take it easy? All Might berated Izuku as the boy tried to keep going. Was overdoing it really worth it, Midoriya? Mizo asked. You guys were steps ahead of me in terms of quirks. I needed at least some kind of momentum to keep up with everyone else, or at least get my foot in the door. Izuku said. Well, when you put it that way, Denki said. It kind of makes sense. Rikido said. All Might realized what's going on. You're overworked. Then Aim to Pass, American Dream Plan, was created with your body in mind. It was fine-tuned to ensure your progress was swift but manageable. Which means you haven't been sticking to it. You're overdoing things. That's gonna have the opposite effect of what we want. I'm guessing that this is the day that you said his body tanked from overdoing what you had planned for him? Nizu asked. Yes, sir. All Might said. I have to work harder or I won't stand a chance against the other applicants. I don't want just into UA. I want to excel. I want to be like you. I want to be the greatest hero in the world, so I'll keep on trying until I've got what it takes to do that. You gotta love that kind of spirit in a kid, though. Present Mike said with a laugh. The young boy has such ambition. Midnight purred. All Might looked on in realization. He flashed back to the day on the roof. I want people to see my fearless smile and feel safe and be just like you. Aldera Izuku said. Ochako watched as the on-screen boy dragged himself through the ground to keep going. She has a strong admiration for how determined Izuku is. She turned to the hero in training next to her and smiled. He was right. That smile of his. That smile made her feel safe and gave her hope. It was also inviting and gave a warm feeling in her heart. A warm feeling? I haven't felt this way since Mina thought I was in love. Is it? Am I? No, I can't be. Tako thought. Gotta hand it to the kid. He's given a lot of thought to the future. All Might bulked up. That fighting spirit's what I like about you, fanboy. All Might said, pulling Izuku up and down as the camera zoomed in. You didn't have to shake the boy like that, All Might. Midnight shook her head. I was so moved by his perseverance. All Might countered. It serves you well. The camera zoomed in closer to All Might. I do get your concerns. That's it. Now's not the time to go and rush progress. The camera zooms in even closer to All Might's face. Fear not. I can get you back on track. I feel bad for Midori. He's so out of it, but the camera keeps zooming into All Might's face. Mina giggled. Leave it to this old man to adjust your plan. All Might said as the camera shifted. RO leaves were falling from the trees. You're not an old man. You're All Might. Izuku said in a strained voice as All Might's laughter boomed. How old are you exactly, All Might? Denki asked. My age is confidential, young Kaminari. All Might said. Really old? Izuku said jokingly, getting page from his classmates. My boy. All Might said in mock betrayal. I expected this from Gran Torino, but not from you. Consider it as payback? Izuku said while laughing. Payback for what? Momo asked. You'll see soon enough, Izuku said, finally stopping his laughter. February 26. And suddenly, it was the day of the exam. Narrator Izuku said. All Might walked from his truck towards the beach. He heard Izuku screaming. You gotta be kidding me, Aizawa said, his hands on his scarf. He glared at the retired hero, who looked away. Everyone in the audience except Izuku and All Might looked at the screen in worry. Izuku, is everything okay? Inko asked. All Might looked up to see Izuku on top of a pile of garbage shirtless, as he screamed in success at completing the 10-month enduring task. Hey holy crap kid, All Might said as his music started to play. You even cleaned up outside the area I told you to. Seriously. There's not one speck of trash left on this beach. It was Midori that cleaned up the whole beach, Mina exclaimed. Class A and Class B gave their thanks and congratulations to Izuku, who was blushing from all of the attention. Only a few minutes to spare, but you exceeded my expectations. Holy, stinking super crap, All Might said as he buffed up. Super crap is right, Midobro. You showed that ocean who's boss. Ijiro exclaimed as he cried manly tears. Izuku swayed on top of the pile and fell toward the beach. All Might caught him as he smiled at his successor. Excellent work, All Might said in pride. A tired Izuku smiled at All Might. I finished everything, All Might. I did it. Do you think I'm ready now? Heck yeah, he's ready, Tetsu exclaimed. Ya daggit. You're going to be a hero. Ochako beamed at him. Yeah, you did good, kid. I got to say, I'm impressed. I knew you had it in you, but this is beyond, All Might said as he put Izuku down. Look at this, All Might said, putting his phone in front of Izuku. Izuku opened his eyes and looked at the phone. It's you crying 10 months ago? So he didn't take the pictures to ridicule Midoriya, but as before and after shots. Itsuka said. Look at how far you've come, All Might said as the camera panned down to show his muscular body. Ochako wasn't the only girl who was blushing seeing Izuku's muscles and defined body. If Ijiro and Tetsu cheered for his manly body. Tenya offered his congratulations and the rest of the students praised Izuku for his hard work, even Katsuki. But his words of praise were just nods of the head. Such improvement. There's still a long road ahead of you before you can inherit my full power set. But it's starting to look like you can do it. All Might, do I deserve this? Are you sure? Izuku asked. Clearly we need to work on your self-doubt, problem child, Aizawa said, despite the glare he was giving the former #1 hero. You put so much time and energy into helping me. How did I end up so lucky? Izuku asked as tears were running down his eyes. Come on Midobro. Did you think it was just luck that you were able to do this? Denki asked. Yeah man. This shows how much drive you have to be a hero, Mashireo said. Ya daggit. Don't you dare say you got lucky. You worked hard all those months. You pushed yourself harder than All Might told you to because you're that determined to get into UA. Ochako said with a warm smile. I guess you're right, Izuku said. All Might laughed at Izuku's answer. He really worried about that after all these months? All Might put his hand on Izuku's back. It was your hard work that did this, not mine. Ochako pointed to the screen. See? She asked with a smirk. All right, you got me. Izuku laughed. Now for your reward, Izuku Midoriya. Yes, sir, Izuku said while sniffling. Here we go, Izuku thought. All Might plucked a hair from his head. Someone told me this once. There's a difference between being lucky and deserving. One's an accident, the other, a reward. Never get the two confused. Take that to heart, young man. This gift, you earned it with your own valiant efforts. Izuku gave All Might a determined look. And so, I held out my weak quirkless hands and grabbed the future? Narrator Izuku said. This is so intense. Setsuna said. All Might held out the hair in his hand and said, Eat this, with a bluish pyro background behind him as Izuku stared at the hair in disbelief that he had to eat it. Anyone who was taking a sip of their drink spit it out immediately in disgust while the rest were simply staring at the screen. What did All Might just say? Momo said, covering her mouth in disgust. To inherit my power, you have to swallow some of my DNA. All Might explained. Katsuki was the only one who didn't react. Instead he burst out in laughter. You had to eat All Might's hair to get his power. You don't seem surprised by this, Bakubro, Tajiro said. Why do you think me and the nerd got house arrest? Katsuki asked sarcastically. This isn't exactly how I imagined it. Izuku said. Wait, DNA transfer? Shoto asked in sudden shock. Tenya turned to Izuku. Midoriya. The hero killer? Everyone except the Sinclairs, Nizu and All Might turned to Izuku. Don't worry. I have to will one for all to be transferred. It can't be taken by force. Izuku reassured them. Guess we don't have to worry about Ochako's limbs exploding off when you kiss, Midori? Mina smirked. Izuku flinched at the same moment. Everyone sighed in relief as All Might was telling Izuku to eat the hair, and they heard the successor screaming while his red high tops and backpack were shown. 8:40 a.m. the same day. The scene changes to the entrance of UA. Izuku is shown running to the entrance. Made it just in time, he said. I was so worried about missing the exam that I didn't have the chance to test out my new power. Thank God he didn't. Aizawa grumbled. Izuku flashed back to All Might giving him the hair. Eat this. Izuku covered his mouth. I may have swallowed the hair, but I don't feel like anything great has happened to me yet. The majority of the students shuddered seeing the hair. How did the hair even taste? Denki asked. Izuku shuddered once more. Disgusting. Stupid Deku? Katsuki's voice was heard. Kaken, get out of my way now before I set you on fire. Katsuki threatened. Everyone turned to glare at Katsuki. Katsuki. Mitsuki growled from her seat. Seriously, Bakugo. You can't go 1 minute without threatening him? Tetsu asked. Shut it, Steel Shima. Katsuki glared at the steel user. Normally that would be funny, but this is something serious. What if a UA teacher heard you say that? Yes, Bakugo. What would you have done? Aizawa had his hands on his capture scarf. Katsuki didn't say anything as two teenagers were talking about his on-screen self. Aizawa narrowed his eyes at the boy. The sludge villain incident made Bakugo respect Midoriya for a little bit despite the constant enmity. Ever since that day, Kaken had been taking it easier on me. Aldra Izuku thought as Katsuki was walking toward the UA building. He sighed. I guess I was scared out of habit. Deku, Ochako thought sadly. She sighed and squeezed Izuku's hand. Izuku shook his head. But I'm not defenseless anymore. Yeah, I have to remember all the work I've put in. Thanks to All Might, I'm actually going to be a hero. His legs were shaking with nervousness. Izuku tripped over his own foot. Or I'll just die. No, Midori. Mina said, trying not to giggle. Just like that, Midobro's dream of being a hero started with a face plant on the ground. Denki said jokingly. Instead of hitting the floor, he was frozen in the same spot when he was about to fall. He looked and saw that he was floating in midair. A brown-haired girl was shown standing next to the frozen, her hand outstretched to touch him. Ochako, it's you. Mina exclaimed. Are you okay? Ochako asked. Izuku was freaking out seeing himself float in midair. She helped him stand up properly. I stopped you with my quirk. I'm sorry I didn't ask first. But I figured you wouldn't mind me catching you. Izuku looked at her in shock that she was actually talking to him. So, Ochako is the first person in our class that you got to meet, Midoriya? Kyoka asked. What about me? Katsuki asked. Izuku's face was beet red but. Isn't this all like way nerve-wracking? Ochako asked. Izuku didn't know what to say. Well, guess I'll see you inside. Bye. Izuku stood there in stunned silence. Damn it. My thoughts. Crap. Holy woe. I just talked to a girl. A caption appeared. Didn't actually talk. The laughter of his classmates was loud enough to block out his on-screen insane laughter. Izuku covered his face and leaned back in his seat. Ochako blushed, but she gave Izuku a confused look. Deku, you make it sound like I was the first girl to ever talk to you. Izuku sat up and put his hands down, giving Ochako an embarrassed look. You actually were the first girl to ever talk to me. Being quirkless, I was a laughingstock and being a fanboy made it worse, especially with girls. I was too nervous at the time to actually say something, but thank you for saving me from getting my face planted on the ground. I'm glad that you were the first person in our class I got to meet. Ochako's heart melted and she tackled Izuku into a hug. It's no longer going to be like that, Deku, and you're welcome for the save, she said with a smile. I know. I'm grateful that everything changed in my life and for all the blessings, Izuku said, smiling back at her. I feel the same, Izuku, Tako thought. Wait, Izuku? But I always call him Deku. There's that feeling again. Hold on. Am I actually in love? I'm so conflicted right now. I feel like I want to melt in happiness from her hugs, Izuku thought. Midnight purred as she watched the genuine smiles on the two young heroes in training. Isn't love such a fascinating thing, Shota? Aizawa was totally not hiding a smile under his scarf. No comment, he said. Come on, Shota. You know something we don't know about the two listeners, PerezK said. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, Aizawa answered. Speaking of love, how are things going with Fukukado? Midnight asked. What I do in my free time is not your concern, Kiyama. Aizawa deflected. Very well, Shota. Midnight rolled her eyes. UA High School Hero Course, Exam Orientation. The guitar riff started to play. What's up, UA candidates? Thanks for tuning in to me, your school DJ. PerezK says on a large stage. Come on and let me hear ya. He put his hand to his ear but was met with silence. Most of the students snickered. Really, Hisashi? You tried to get an audience of nervous kids? Midnight laughed. Do you little listeners know how hard it is to do a call and response and not get a response? PerezK asked in a mock stern voice. Sorry about that, sir. I think we were too nervous to get into it. Izuku apologized. Fair enough, listener, PerezK said. Keeping it mellow, huh? That's fine. I'll skip straight to the main show. Let's talk about how this practical exam is going to go down, okay? Are you ready? He was met with silence again. Izuku had an idea. He grabbed his phone from his pocket and opened up the screen to his class group chat. Deku, hey guys. The next time PerezK tries to make everyone on the screen yell something, we should totally yell it. It would make him so happy. Creati, Midoriya, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Red Riot, that sounds great, Midobro. I'm in. Earphone Jack, let's do it. Alien Queen, so am I. Chargebolt, me too. Most of the class agreed with the plan. Ingenium, Midoriya, as much as I don't approve of the use of phones while we are watching this, I agree with your plan. I will get Hatsum in on the idea. Izuku told Ochako the plan. I wish that Ochako had a phone so that she can participate in the group chats. I mean, make it a surprise, like put it in our room tomorrow after I confess to her. Great. I sound like I'm making a wish to a genie, Izuku thought with a sigh. Alistair and Giselle smiled at the Greenette's wish. Thank God that he is the class cinnamon roll. One of the perks of being time spirits is that the house told them the wishes that their guests make. That was also one of the downsides of being time spirits. Giselle was tempted to bring out the holy water when she heard Minoru's requests. Izuku had his hands over his mouth. Oh my goodness, it's the voice hero, PerezK. So cool. He gushed as he was sitting next to Katsuki, surrounded by a pink dreamy aura. I listen to his radio show every day of the week. It's so crazy nuts that all the UA teachers are pro-heroes. Will you shut up? Katsuki asked. Aizawa elbowed PerezK. Looks like you have a fan, Hisashi. The voice hero chuckled and smiled. I didn't know you were a regular listener, Midoriya. We should do a collab sometimes. We can do one on your take of being the world's greatest hero. Izuku turned and smiled at PerezK. Really? That would be great, sir. It would be an honor. So manly. Aijiro smiled. Like your application says, today you rocking boys and girls will be out there conducting 10-minute mock battles in super-hit suburban settings. Gird your loins, my friends. PerezK said as the screen behind him changes to show the different battle centers. After I drop the mic here, you'll head to your specified battle center. Sound good? Okay? He was met with silence once more as no one in the room replied to him. Yeah. Most of Class A and May yelled in response to the on-screen present mic, scaring the adults, Class B and Hitoshi. Your students are amazing, Shota. Present Mike said with a wide grin. Yeah, they have that effect. Aizawa said. I see. They're splitting us up so we can't work with any of our friends. Katsuki said. Yeah, you're right. Our examinee numbers are one after the other. But we're assigned to different battle centers. Wow. I never thought I would see the two of you have a casual conversation. Denki said. Get your eyes off my card. Katsuki glared at Izuku. Damn, I was really looking forward to crushing you. Izuku laughed nervously. And he's back. Denki said. Okay, let's check out your targets. There are 3 types of foe villains in every battle center. You'll earn points based on their level of difficulty, so better choose wisely. The screen behind him changed to show the 3 robots, and then a mini present mic figure crushing the robots. Your goal in this trial is to use your quirk to raise your score by shredding these faux villains like a mid-song guitar solo. But check it. Make sure you're keeping things heroic. Attacking other examinees is a no-no, you dig? Present Mike said. Excuse me, sir, but I have a question, Tenya said, raising his hand. Hit me. Present Mike yells. A spotlight shone on Tenya. On the printout, you've listed 4 types of villains. Not 3. With all respect, if this is an error on official UA materials, it is shameful. We are exemplary students. We expect the best from Japan's most notable school. A mistake such as this won't do. Geez, Ida. Dial it back a few notches. Hanta said. Additionally, you with the unkempt hair, Tenya said, pointing to Izuku. You've been muttering this entire time. Stop that. If you can't bother to take this seriously, leave. You're distracting the rest of us. Izuku covered his mouth and apologized while the teenagers were laughing at him. You're a real stick in the mud, you know that, glasses? Katsuki said, glaring in Tenya's direction. Putting Deku on the spot like that? Everyone was shocked to hear Katsuki defend Izuku. Geez, Tenya. Seriousness is in your blood, huh? May asked teasingly, smacking the boy next to her gently on the arm. Tenya? Class A thought, looking at the class rep. Tenya surprisingly blushed at the light hit. He stood up and bowed to Izuku. I apologize, Midoriya. I was nervous at the time, but it was wrong of me to call you out in front of everyone like that. It's all good, Ida. Izuku said. All right. Examinee number 7111. Thanks for calling in with your request. The 4th villain type is worth 0 points. That guy's just an obstacle we'll be throwing in your way. There's one in every battle center. Think of it as a hurdle you should try to avoid. It's not that it can't be beaten, Present Mike said, as the screen behind him showed the mini Present Mike figure running away from the 0-pointer. But there's kinda no point. I recommend my listeners try to ignore it and focus in the lines top in the charts. Thank you very much. Please, continue, Tenya said, bowing before sitting down. The spotlight turned off. Really, Ida? Telling a teacher that he can continue? Itsuka asked jokingly. Oh, I get it. So they're kinda like traps you have to get by in games? The whole thing's kinda like a video game, huh? It really was like a video game, wasn't it? Mashireo pointed out. It was designed that way for a reason, Nizu piped up. We wanted all of the students to understand it, and making it like a video game seemed the easiest way for that to be possible. That's all I got for you today. I'll sign off with a little present. A sample of our school motto. As General Napoleon Bonaparte once laid down, a true hero is one who overcomes life's misfortunes. Now that's a tasty soundbite. You ready to go beyond? Let's hear a plus ultra. Good luck. Hope you practiced hitting more than just books, Present Mike said. No one in the theater said plus ultra. Plus ultra. The students yelled. Midnight and All Might even joined in. You guys are the best. Present Mike yelled, a giant smile on his face. The screen now showed the battle center where Izuku's group would take the practical exam. Well, this is it. Time to put the 10 months of training with all might to the test. Time to give it my all. I will become a hero. Just like I always dreamed. I won't let myself down. Izuku thought, shaking. He slapped both of his cheeks to calm his nerves. The ending began to play. Hey Deku, Ochako said softly. Thank you for defending me against Mineta. It means a lot. Of course, Akurarka. I didn't want you to get blamed for something you didn't do. Izuku reassured her. Were you about to call me by my name, Deku? Ochako gave the boy a smile. No I wasn't. I mean maybe. Sorry I don't know what came over me. Izuku stuttered. Ochako laughed. It's okay, I don't mind. You did call me by my first name a few times. Thanks Ochakeo. I almost forgot that I did that. The poor boy was nearly neon. Her smile widened into a grin as she had the same feeling in her chest from earlier. She giggled and hugged him. He's too cute for his own good. If you want, you can call me Izuku. Izuku said confidently. I'm sticking with Deku. Ochako said. For now. Okay Ochako. Izuku said. Look at them. They deserve each other. It's so sweet. Mina whispered. Yeah. I guess whatever happened in Ochako's room brought them a little closer. Kyoka whispered. Yeah. I'm happy for them especially after everything Midobro went through. Ijiro whispered. Uraraka needs you too, Midobro. Ijiro thought. All Might's music begins to play. UA High's entrance exam is here and every one of us wants a spot at this prestigious school. The question is, will I be able to get through the practical with the power I only just received from All Might? Izuku asked. Let's do our best on the exam today. Ochako encouraged Izuku. For you. Holy crap, it's that girl I talked to? Izuku exclaimed. Next time, start line. The two of them exclaimed. I, Ochako, will try hard not to puke during the test. Ochako stated. Go beyond. Plus ultra. The students and teachers yell out. The timer starts. Everyone started to get up and stretch or use the bathroom. Ochako, I didn't know that you did a preview with Midori. Mina exclaimed. But I don't remember doing a preview with Deku. Ochako admitted. I don't remember either. But after that last episode, I think it's best not to question the previews and to be cautious with the information they may give. Izuku said. Mina pouted. I guess I have to wait to find out if I do a preview with Midori. That's cool, Mina. But you and I have to talk. Kyoka said. Toru, can you also come with me? Sure. Toru said happily. The three of them left the theater. Momo approached Itsuka's row and they left the theater as well. Mei whispered something to Tenya and he nodded before she also left. The class rep approached Izuku and Ochako. I want to speak to the two of you. I apologize if I said anything earlier that hurt you. Please forgive me. He bowed. It's okay, Ida. Ochako reassured him. We're still going through some things but we have you guys. I hope you guys won't judge me and Deku for keeping this from all of you. It's fine. Take all the time you need. Tenya said. Thanks, Ida. Izuku said. I think it's obvious because Mr. Sinclair said it when we came into the theater, but we're sharing a room. Yes, I am aware. Hatsum and I are also sharing a room. Tenya said. Hatsum, huh? Ochako suddenly had a mischievous smirk on her face. Is there something going on with the two of you? No. Of course not. Hatsum is a friend and nothing more. Tenya said. You're starting to sound like Ashido, Uraraka. Sure, Ida. Geez, Tenya. Don't think I didn't see her smacking your arm. Midoriya, not you too. Tenya exclaimed. The three of them were laughing and made a few jokes. But they weren't aware that two teachers had their eyes on them. So they're sharing a room here. That's good to know. Aizawa said. Mr. Sinclair knows what they were going through, past and present. I'm guessing he is also aware of their feelings for each other. All Might said. Still, if the show is about Midoriya's life, what are the chances that they might see what happened again? How will Uraraka react? Aizawa asked. I'm not sure if I wish to see Mirai pass away again, Aizawa. All Might admitted. We can talk to Midoriya about it when we leave the theater for the day. Aizawa said and All Might nodded.